Hello, Sydney Seneviratne.
Yes.
We were just practicing saying your last name before the podcast because you say everybody messes it up.
Well, it used to be Blake. So
Okay.
I just made life really good.
Made it much more complicated. So I have Sydney here today because Sydney is a powerlifter. And we're definitely getting that. And you teach nursing right now, correct?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, so actually, I like to do this with first-time podcast guests. So this is your first podcast?
My first podcast. Yeah.
Okay. And you were feeling nervous?
I was a little nervous. Yeah.
How are you feeling now?
I'm okay. I've done one interview before.
Okay, yeah.
But it's a lot more relaxing here, for sure.
And I think the chairs help and everything. And I think I was mentioning this to you when we were texting last week, when I thought you were coming over on that Monday. We planned for the 20th, but I thought the 20th was the day that I was texting you. And so we're on for the 20th still, right? And I look at the calendar, I'm like, oh man. But it's like, you're just having a conversation.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Although I am asking you questions and whatnot, it's not an interview. It's me getting to know you, and it's you expressing yourself and sharing who you are with the world, right? And I think everyone kind of starts the same. You can tell they're kind of nervous and everything, and then as it goes on, they pick up and they get louder and more exciting. And it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
It's a lot of fun. So let's start. Let's tell everybody who you are, where you're from, especially with that last name, and let's get into more about you.
Okay. So where am I from? So I grew up in Edmonton.
Okay.
And then I got my nursing degree there. So I've been a nurse, oh my gosh, for 32 years.
Okay.
That kind of ages me a little bit. So does the gray, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's not even know.
Yeah. It is what it is. So I've been a nurse for a long time, but I lived in Victoria for a little bit, did my bachelor's degree there. And then I moved to Calgary, and it was in Calgary that I met my husband. And he is Sri Lankan. So that's the last name.
Okay, so that's the last name. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because you're like Edmonton. I'm like, well.
Yeah, because my main name is Blake, which is a very, very British name.
Okay.
My husband's Sri Lankan, but he was brought up here in Calgary, and he's more Calgarian than most people, I think. Yeah, has a cowboy hat and all that. And then when I came to Calgary, I worked at the Foothills in neurosciences. Worked there for mainly relief because I was doing my master's in nursing at that time. So that would have been 1995, long time ago, it seems. And then when I finished that, I worked here, and that's sort of where I met my husband, was when I was working and out in the land of having fun. And then we got married. I think I was 33 when we got married. And then I did my PhD after that. And I was still working relief at the Foothills.
Yeah.
But I was teaching at the same time. So in 96 or 97, I was teaching nursing students in clinical. So I would have a group of 8. I would do that. And it was a lot of fun. It's fun teaching students. I love being a nurse, but I like teaching way more.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's just nursing seems... I love critically thinking about a clinical problem when I was working on the floor, but it seemed like, I'm working at 12 and then I'm working another night, and I usually worked all nights, and it seemed like things would be different every day, but I like to be challenged a lot.
Okay.
A lot. I get bored. I'm sure someone would diagnose me with ADHD for sure. But I've never been diagnosed for that. But I think I can diagnose myself with that. But anyway, so when I decided that I would rather teach was when I started getting students. Usually in nursing school, your last sort of stint of clinical practice is a practicum where you're with a nurse, just the nurse, and you don't have an instructor. And so I did that a couple of times, and I was like, oh my God, I love this. Because the light bulbs would go off, and they'd be like, oh, that's why you do it that way, or that's why, nurses do these things a certain way, or that's why you give that drug. That's why you can't give that drug with this drug, right? That kind of thing. So it just felt more natural for me to do that. And I was constantly challenged because you would get a student that would just figure it out.
Yeah.
And then you'd have the one that was like, well, I have to work a little harder for this student and that kind of thing. So I just naturally am a teacher. It just sort of seems to be what I do. Some people just hate it, but I just
like hate teaching. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you mentioned you preferred teaching, and so why is that?
Mainly it's because I think I have a lot of patience.
Okay.
And you need a lot of patience to teach people. Mm-hmm. And you have to have the patience where you think, I can't believe you don't know this. Like,
there, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like somebody, it's like Joe Blow off the street would figure this out faster than you. And I've had students where I'm like, and you're just, and so there are some people who are like, I can't deal with that kind of, lack of preparation or those sorts of things. Some students just get it, other students don't. And so you have to be able to be patient, and you have to be able to be kind. And inside you might be going, what the are you thinking? Like, and I know I have this internal dialogue that goes.
Does your face show it?
I have one of those faces where if you say something, I'm like, I automatically will. So I have to work on that, but it's more of when I have a challenging student, I'm like, well, that's part of it, which is me saying, oh my God.
Yeah.
No, it's like, no, that's part of it. But what else? It's trying to pull it out of them. So, I really enjoy that much more than working on the floor. And some of it, like working in the nursing, like in the hospital on the floor. Some of it is because I don't like the politics and the drama.
Yeah, okay.
I have a real hard time with politics and drama. Yeah, okay. It causes me great anxiety, and my anxiety comes out usually in not anger. I don't think that's the right word. It's more like frustration. Okay, because these are professionals. You should know better. Yeah. Like students are one thing, and I let them get away with a lot. Yeah. But my colleagues, it can cause me some frustration. So there's always drama that happens, and I try and stay out of it, but it's hard.
It's hard. What's like the drama?
So on most nursing units, there's little cliques.
Okay.
It's like high school.
Mean Girls.
Yeah, definitely. And so if you're someone who's overeducated, so, if you have a master's or a PhD like I did, they can be a little exclusionary, right?
Why is that?
Oh, I don't know.
They feel
it's a nurse. Yeah, it's a nursing thing. Some of them, it could have been my own perception because every one of us has a certain element of paranoia,
It's fair.
But I don't think so. So, but students just, they just take in everything that you can offer them. And I always tell them, I am not the all-knowing wizard. If I don't know something, I'm going to tell you, and we have to go look it up. We have to learn together. And that's the other thing, is you learn with someone is much better than forgetting something when you're working with another colleague and them saying, really, you don't know that?
Yeah.
How many years have you been a nurse? Like stuff like that. And it's like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah. So would you say, because you were talking about patience and everything, so like that's a challenge for you to remain patient? Because you said you like to be challenged.
With students, not necessarily. What keeps me challenged with students is I learn all the time. And I have to stay up to date. Mm-hmm. And I have to read, like I co-authored a textbook on pharmacology. I have to keep up on the latest and everything related to almost not every drug because we split up the textbook. But the majority of things I have to keep up to date, or whatever I'm teaching my students is just garbage.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas now you have to keep up to date when you're working as well as a nurse for sure. But I just felt, here's your 8 o'clock med, here's your vital, I'm taking your vitals, I'm doing, it just felt so repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
And others, it's not like that for them. And that's great. I'm not saying my what I chose for my career is better than anyone else. It's just I believe you should do what works well in your life for your job.
Yeah, I understand, because I love to do mentoring and so teaching, right? And like, for example, lately I have someone that continuously keeps bringing me GI maps to go over, and that's exactly it, because like your clients have done, like, if they have done a GI map, it's one, and then now we're working on it, and it's kind of like you're going through the stages that you've been through multiple times. So when you're mentoring someone, it's like new this, new that, and like you're pulling from areas that you haven't talked about and who knows how long, and then that's what keeps the mind fresh and makes you better at your job, kind of thing.
Yeah, and they'll bring new articles. Or I Googled this and then my heart drops. But they Google something which led them to some article that led them to that I haven't seen before. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, really? What's that article? And then I'll get it and I'll read it, pull it in the next time I do a lecture or whatever, because I don't teach students really in clinical anymore.
Okay.
I lecture. Like I lecture classes of 150.
So you said it was at, did you say USC?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And what's that like? Is it like a Monday to Friday kind of thing, or how does your schedule look?
This is the great thing about academia. I can work a lot from home.
Okay.
And especially since COVID, a lot of us sort of moved ourselves home to work. And so I have an office at U of C, but I have an office at home. Okay. And so I'll go into the university when I have to teach, or I have to work in the lab, or if I have a meeting that's in person. But most of our meetings are online. There's via Zoom. And some days I'll say, okay, I'm not going to work today. And it could be a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right? Or like you've seen me at the gym, I'm usually there during the day. Yeah. Because I train better during the day than in the evening. I found that I would get a little more injured because I'm more tired.
There, yeah.
But I can do that because then after supper, I can just sit down and work for a couple of hours and make up that time. Yeah. Sometimes I work on the weekend. I'll work all weekend if I'm preparing a lecture, or if I'm working on a chapter, because we're bringing in a new edition of our textbook. And so, it's not a 9-to-5 job. You have to create your own time, which is really nice. I really like the flexibility of that, rather than saying I have to work 9 to 5, or this is my shift, or right. I'm a little more flexible.
Are you good with time management with that, though?
Not at first. Oh my gosh. Before,
having your own schedule can be tough sometimes.
Before I had I have a 12-year-old daughter, Annalisa. Before we had her, I was at the university every day.
Oh, wow.
And I would work, I'd get there at 9, because my husband and I, we'd leave at the same time. I'd get there at 9. I'd work until 2. And then at that time, we had 2 greyhounds. So I would come home and I would walk the dogs, and then I'd work a little at home, and then my husband would get home and make supper, because I don't cook very much. Not until Matt made me
prep your food, yeah.
I never cooked before that. Now I'm like,
so did you just always eat out?
Pardon?
Did you just always eat out, or what'd you do?
No, my husband.
Oh, he just did all the cooking.
Yeah, he's an excellent cook.
Oh, so Lonkin's good at cooking.
I am not. I just hate it. It's not my jam. I'll clean everything up. Just cook. I'll clean everything up is my thing.
And then you put all this effort in, and if you screw it up, you're like,
oh yeah. Yeah. But I know I do a little bit more now. So I think my husband is like, yes.
Yeah. Taking the load off.
Because he works all day, and then I've been home, and I'm like, hi.
Right.
He's like, so I guess I'm cooking. It's like,
yeah, for me, I do struggle with the time management, because like for example, before you showed up, I'm like, vacuuming as fast as I can because I was trying to get an Instagram post done and all this kind of stuff. And like, because when you have your own schedule, like let's say you like last night, people had come over to look at Lola, and you know, you're just like, oh yeah, we'll just hang out for a bit or whatever and whatnot, and then next thing you know, over an hour goes by, and then you've lost that hour and everything. Where if you're like, if you had that 9 to 5, you're like, no, I'm at work right now getting things done. So that's what the difficulty I find sometimes.
Well, it was a challenge at first, especially after we had our daughter, because then I had to balance. Because at that time when I had my daughter, then I was an associate dean.
Okay.
So like I say, my job has changed a lot because I get bored. I swear I have ADHD. I get bored, and then I'm like, I have to find something that's really gonna push me harder. And so when I was the associate dean, I had the associate dean work, which was I was in the office a lot. And then I had to go get my daughter from daycare. I had to, like, it was a lot more hard to balance everything, and I burnt myself out for sure. But right now it's a lot better because I schedule in like my training. I schedule in, I schedule around it, right? And lucky for me, knock wood, my meetings have never clashed with my training. There are times I've had to move my training because, the job is what pays for the training. So I kind of have to move things around for that purpose. And then I have two parents that are elderly. And so they live in their home, but I do definitely spend time taking them to appointments, making sure they're okay, things like that, because, they're older. So I feel like I'm in that sandwich generation. There's all these things. So I can overwhelm myself a lot. So I get that. I understand that a lot.
Do you get to bed at a decent time?
I'm usually in bed by like 8:30 or 9, but lights do not go out until like 10:30.
Oh, really? So just reading, watching TV?
I usually read. I usually read. Sometimes if I've worked too much that day or I need to shut off, I'll watch TV, like Netflix or something, because we're one of those bad people. We have a TV in our bedroom. Like,
I can't say anything. I got one of them.
But to me, it's not something that doesn't let me not sleep. Because as soon as I turn it off, I put on my, ocean music, and then I just, start picking away at the day, and I throw things out of my head. I do. And then eventually I fall asleep pretty quick.
If I have the TV on, I can't fall asleep.
No.
But what I use is my iPad. So I take my iPad and I turn the brightness all the way down, and like I put on movies that I've already seen 100 times, so you know what's coming, so you're kind of like not in tune, but you're slightly in tune enough that you're not thinking, like overthinking or thinking about things you shouldn't be when you're trying to fall asleep, and out. I fall asleep, no problem. But if that TV's on, even if I take the brightness and wind the brightness all the way down and got the volume low, and then if like you can't find that sweet spot where the volume's like it's too high or too low, so if it's too low you're trying to like hear what they're saying, so then your mind's going, but then if it's too loud it's stimulating, and so I just use the iPad.
If people are talking like that I won't sleep. So I try and get to sleep before my husband comes to bed, because then he uses his iPad to help him sleep, and he's one of these people who'll put it down, out. And I could just punch him right in the head. He's just out. I have to okay, so that I can't worry about that. And these things, I just throw them out of my head. And then I find my position because I get numbness and tingling in my hand at night, so I have to find this position where I sleep, and the tingling stops, and then I fall asleep. I think it's thoracic outlet. Well, I'm pretty sure it is, because I've been told it is.
I have a friend who can drink a double in bed, watching YouTube videos, and then he'll fall asleep with his coffee and his phone in his hand. He's got no, I'm not saying he's distressed, but he's just one of the most laid back individuals I've ever met. So he'll make a coffee at 10 o'clock at night. He'll be like, you want one? And I was like, no, I'm going to bed.
My mind just races.
Do you supplement anything for sleep?
How do you say it?
Ashwagandha?
Yeah. That's the one I like. I just take one And if I'm really, really stressed out, what's it called?
L-theanine?
That's the
Yeah. Yeah, those are good.
If I'm really, really stressed out, I'll take one of those. But usually melatonin doesn't work for me. It actually makes me more awake. I don't know why, but it does. I think it has that potential for some people.
Yeah. So how I explain that to people is when you take something that theoretically should make you sleepy, there's a deficiency somewhere in there. So like magnesium bisglycinate, like that's one that I always highly recommend because it calms the central nervous system. And the one that I recommend is called ATP Labs Cinermag because it contains taurine and B6, which makes that magnesium more effective. Plus taurine also calms the central nervous system. Yeah. But if you take magnesium and all of a sudden you have a bunch of energy, it's showing you how deficient you are in magnesium, for example. So when you look at something like melatonin is actually an extremely powerful antioxidant. So there could be something going on in there that all of a sudden the body's going, okay, now we have these resources. Yeah. So let's get stuff done. And it actually creates like a cortisol response and they can wake you up or whatever. Okay. So that's what I always tell people.
There you go. There you go. I do take magnesium.
Yeah.
But that's earlier. I take that for recovery, which I need lots of recovery because I'm older. Yeah, so sleep used to be a real problem. I used to get maybe 1 or 2 hours a night. That was when I was the associate dean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that because of stress?
Yeah, because you see that 1% of a group of a whole faculty of nursing students. You see the 1% that are struggling the most with some, not horrible, but some so sad stories. That it just ate away at me.
Like in their personal life or like with patients?
No, usually it was never, they usually were never where they would impact the patients. So there was never patient safety at risk.
Okay.
It's mainly trying to help them with some of the things that were causing them to not do as well in clinical than they should or in class. And they're heartbreaking stories that they have. And I used to think, I'm pretty tough. I'm a tough person. Oh my gosh, do I wear my heart on my sleeve more than I ever thought I did. And it broke. And it broke hard. Yeah. And so it was too much. The work was not the issue. The issue was just the emotional strain it took. Plus I had a young kid, like my daughter was 2, 3. So it was enough. And no, I said to my husband, it's not worth the extra pay. I'd rather be home with you, missing the Mother's Day thing at daycare, stuff like that. So when I finished my associate dean, I had gained so much weight. And it's not like I was over drinking, but you're like, I have a glass of wine. If it was a hard day, or usually for me, it was a beer.
Every day is a hard day.
Usually it was about 2 beers on the weekend, like on a Friday. Yeah. And it was, or more, because we have some very fun neighbors. But, it was a lot. And so I had gained a lot of weight. Like, I think I was a size 14 or size 16. Like, really, for me, that's big. I'm only 5'3". Yeah. It's not the best. And now I think I'm a size 8, which is where I should be naturally. But that's when I started training, was right after that. I think it was in 2018.
And was that with Matthew? You started?
Yeah, it was at the Y. At the Y, I just thought, oh, well, maybe I should get a trainer because I don't know what I'm doing. And clearly I didn't, because training with Matt, he'd be like, well, that's okay, but you should really be doing this. He taught me about food and taught me about a lot of things. So I was like, oh, I can't eat that? Oh. Okay. Well, hummus is great, but other sources of protein are better. Learning stuff like that took some time. But.
Yeah, I think it took me a while, even as a coach and everything, to realize what people don't know, right? And because like you'd mentioned, like when you're with students and stuff, you'd be like, oh, how come you don't know that? I find there are times where it's like, if I was talking to a coach, another coach, and I'm like, you're a coach, but you don't know this, like that's BS, right? But like the general public, I came to a realization that it's like, wow, like, a lot of times, even stuff that's just so natural to you, like a funny story, and I told her, I always talk about this story. I had a client a while ago, and I told her, like, I just said vegetables was just, I think it was like anywhere from 100 to 200 grams per meal of non-starchy vegetables or something like that is what I said. And every week she was like not losing weight or if gaining weight or whatever. And at the time, like I was still relatively new, and my person that I learned from was the best person to learn from, and everybody's cheating and that's why they're not getting results. And now where I'm at, I know that's not the case, but so I was just like, you're cheating, like you're obviously cheating. You don't gain weight and caloric deficit and everything, blah, blah. Anyways, we come to find out that she was eating edamame beans as her vegetable, which is a complete meal, right? So she was getting an extra like 4,000 calories a week or something like that, right? And but it's that at that time it was probably arrogance on my part, thinking like, these people should know this, but then you start to learn that, just they don't know. And you mentioned like Google, because you go on the internet and you Google things. It's like, I'll get like coaches that I mentor, I'll say, okay, what I want you to do is, because I don't know if you run into this, like people rely on you for the answers. Do you run into that a lot? Right? So you have to challenge them. You got to be like, look, you create the plan and then we'll go over it. I'm not going to create the plan for you. You're going to create the plan, then we're going to go over it. So they'll create the plan and I'll come back and I'll be like, I've never even heard of this in my life. Like, what is this? And then I'll go look it up. I'm like, no, it has nothing to do with what we're trying to do. But that's Google. Right? Like that's Google. And so like, I could imagine like in your industry as well, like it's there's probably so many people going down that wrong path, being misdirected by, or even like research papers, because a lot of people do not understand how to read research. And
it's so important. Like, I am not the sharpest knife in the drawer when it comes to simple, basic math. However, I took, a PhD level stats course. So when I read a randomized control trial, I understand what to look for, the confidence intervals, look to see whether or not they've used the right test, like all of those different things and then from there, I choose whether or not I'm going to, believe in their findings. And even then, I have to be able to look at it to say, are they interpreting it the way that it should? And 50% of the time, I have to go to my colleagues that are more on the statistician end of or quantitative research and say, should I trust this? But students don't do that. They just look in the abstract. They don't even
conclusion.
They don't even read the entire article. And it's like, no, you have to take a look at those particular pieces. There are even in qualitative research, when someone is saying, this is how they interpreted some focus group. Well, they've had 5 people in their focus group. And it's which is fine. The number isn't the issue. The issue is what questions were asked. That's number one. Did you lead them? Like, how did that all work? And then on top of that, I always find that they can be directed a little bit more than any quantitative study could. But usually students are more able to take up what was learned or out of a qualitative research study than a quantitative research study. Because with qualitative, you can say, well, that's the perception of the participant at the time that it was conducted. It can't be generalized. So you just describe it as is. So it's a little bit, it's better that way for students. But anyway, I do agree with you that even in my own case, I'm a nurse, so I should understand nutrition. Nope.
But they don't really teach you that, do they?
No, well, we have a little bit, but it used to be when I did my nursing, it was a diploma. So you came out with an RN. I didn't have a university degree. Okay. I had to take it all after. And we have a whole course on nutrition. Like a whole course. So understanding macros was not very difficult for me. What was difficult for me was hearing that it was okay to eat a carb.
Yeah.
And understanding that you can get carbs from fruit. And you can get, and I knew that logically.
Yeah.
But just learning things like that, it's okay to eat a whole bunch of fruit and just a little bit of rice. You don't have to have the rice be the entire carb.
Yeah.
You know, it just depends on how it works with your stomach.
Yeah. And well, so that's where like a lot of people, once again, I have to sometimes step back and remember where people are coming from. But people will ask me like, well, what nutrition course did you take, or which one should I take? And I always tell them, I was like, okay, look at it this way. We're in a society now where we know damn well to eat salmon and nuts and seeds and healthy fats. You don't need a nutrition course to tell you that.
Yeah.
We know that you can go online and input your statistics into a calculator and try to figure out your calories. So I almost think like the nutrition's a waste of time, but I have to remember too that people are not in my position, right? Because that's my thought process. I'll just eat healthy. Yeah. What you need to learn is, one is training is a big one, right? People don't understand what happens when you think of it like, we know an engine turns over, but we don't know exactly what entirely happens to all the other systems when you place load on that engine. So it's the same with like the human body. People don't understand what happens when you place specific loads at specific ranges, under specific tempos, under specific conditions, whether that be their nutrition, their sleep, and everything, right? And it's like, so what I mean by that for people that don't understand is like, you know, if I try to put you in a glycolytically demanding workout while you're eating low carbs, that's going to create a lot of oxidative stress and free radicals. But everybody's so focused on, well, what do I eat? What do I eat? Well, no, change your training, right? You're probably eating fine, right? Unless you're eating out every time, but most likely your nutrition is okay. It's like your training, or then you go on to much more complex things like that. And you're talking gut health, you're talking liver, adrenals, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, that kind of stuff. Once again, very basic nutrition applies to that. Okay, we need to make sure you are ingesting healthy sources. But a good example is a client of mine, you go on her Instagram and it's nothing but healthy food. Like she's got and she's very good cook and very creative and everything. One of the worst GI maps I've seen. So that's what I mean. So it's like, we know to eat healthy, but so you could take somebody and you've learned that, okay, I want you to have some rice and fruit and don't use hummus as a protein source, use beef or chicken or whatever instead. But then they might get a negative response because you fed them too much fiber.
Yeah.
And that fed into their gut issue. Well, the nutrition course isn't going to teach you that.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of like where my head is at. But I have to remember that people don't even know what a carb is sometimes, right?
No, and then you learn, I think, well, in the 90s, it was bad to eat fat. And then later it was don't eat any carbs at all. And I
Atkins diet.
Yeah, the Atkins diet, and which has helped a lot of people. I tried it. It nearly killed me. My body. Oh, I did not lose weight. It was like I went into a serious depression.
Yeah, okay.
For me, because my body loves carbs. My body uses carbs properly. So it could have been Matt that said it, but he didn't mean it in a negative or derogatory way. But my body is kind of like a carb whore.
I call all my clients, anyone that can handle high carbs, that's what I call them, carb whores.
It's so horrible. It's not, I didn't take it as a negative at all. It's true. That's, my body really likes it. And I was so constipated.
On Atkins?
Yeah.
That's the lack of fiber.
Oh my gosh. And even I had so many bowel issues and I'd use laxatives to help, which made it worse. And I was just a mess.
Do you know where your hormones are at?
I didn't know because, which no offense to physicians, but they don't test your hormones. They don't want to test your hormones. They for whatever reason, I asked and asked and asked, and it wasn't until I was going like perimenopausal, right? that I finally got somewhere to ask them. So I was assuming that my hormones were fine, you know. But I think for me, who told me? There was like a friend of mine. We were out with friends with my husband, and they asked how much do I eat, and at the time I was prepping for nationals, and I was like up a little over 3,500 calories a day, and on rest days it wasn't that much lower, but the amount of work I was doing was, you know, kind of what I'm doing now because I'm prepping for provincials.
Yeah.
But it's just my body uses it so well, and it uses it better when I have protein, which I never not have protein, ever. I always have my proteins. Probably the first thing I have when I wake up, which I don't know if that's right or wrong, but my body likes it. If I have like a protein shake and I take, you know, my vitamin C and my different things that I take in the morning, my B complex, you know, those sorts of things. But, you know, the thing that I have trouble keeping in my diet are fats.
How come?
Like, I don't know. It's just, I've been using olive oil to supplement. It's just, I forget about it. It sort of equals out in my little fitness, like where I track my macros. It'll equal out. And if I'm off by like 10 grams, I'm like, bah. But there's a reason why that puts it at 30 grams or 20 grams compared to how much protein or carb he wants me to ingest. But it's not my priority. So one of the things, because every week I have to reflect on what I did well and what I didn't. Things that I need to include are like nuts. Because when you said nuts, I was like, it's not something I sort of put in. Avocado disagrees with me.
Bloating and everything, brain fog.
Yeah.
Probably have more histamine clearance then. So they're very high in histamine.
And my nemesis for food, which I love, I could sit down and eat 4 wheels of cheese. I love cheese, but if I eat cheese, it's maybe you can explain it to me, but this is what happens. I'll eat the cheese. The next day I get bloated. If not that day, like I look pregnant by that night. And then if I train the next day, it's garbage. My training is garbage, absolute garbage. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, it's probably a combination of both inflammation and histamine response is what it is. And because a lot of times like that histamine will create that inflammation as well. And then like, because I always tell people, you hear about like lactose intolerance and all that kind of stuff. And it's not always the dairy, because you hear the stories of people that are lactose intolerant and they'll go to like Italy and eat all the dairy and have no issues, right? It's just the way we process things and manufacture things here. But like when you look at like histamine clearance, you have your DAO enzyme, which is one of your genes, and that's responsible for clearing that histamine. That's housed in your microvilli in your GI tract. And most people's microvilli is tramped on. So their DAO enzyme is quite significantly reduced, so that histamine clearance is poor. So that's like, you know, like you said, nuts, and you put your head down, but like nuts might not be good for you because they tend to be higher in histamine.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, and I have allergies like you would not believe.
Yeah, so you probably have like a slow DAO enzyme, and you might have like a little bit of like tight junction compromisation, and everybody does.
And I take antihistamines. Not all the time, but right now I am taking them every day.
Like Reactive and stuff?
Yeah, because I have a dog in my house, which I'm not horribly allergic, but if they lay on my bed.
There's like I got 3 in here.
yeah. But what it does is, like I have allergies to snow mold. Like it's all environmental, and then it makes me short of breath.
Yeah.
And then because I have asthma. So I have to, so it's just this big nasty mess sometimes. And I sound nasal because I'm constantly, it's like, but
you could try like I always tell this to people, like, I have to be careful what I recommend to people without working with them, because like I could recommend the wrong thing and it'd come back on me. But like most people are relatively safe with things like quercetin, like it's a natural antihistamine. Because the problem with things like Reactive and stuff, they're not clearing it, they're just blocking the receptor. So as soon as it wears off, you're like, right?
First thing in the morning, I'm like, because we have Alvin right now and my sister's dog.
Yeah.
yet. But once the dog leaves, then I'm fine, and I don't have to take them.
Yeah.
And I don't like taking them because they dry everything out. And
Yeah.
it's not, I only have Alvin for another week, so it should be fine. But yeah, lately I've been dog sitting, so I've had to. We're like the house people take their dogs to.
I get that.
Yeah, because it's still a dog house.
Yeah.
We don't have any dogs right now.
Yeah. Because you had 2 greyhounds, you said.
Did.
Yeah.
We did have two of them. But yeah, so for me right now my gut is perfect. I think it's perfect because I don't have any, issues. I have like my daily constitution every day.
Yeah.
It's same days or same time of day. Like it's like clockwork. Whereas before it was like a disaster. Like it was and I think some of it was I was drinking a lot. You're young, you drink all the time. That's what you do. But now if I have one drink, I feel my liver, it becomes swollen. It becomes inflamed.
Yeah.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
Because I'm a nurse and, you lie down. And, I'm like, yeah, I worry that, it just doesn't like that anymore. And it's okay. I don't mind because alcohol is not the best for me anyway. And I can usually have a lot of fun without it. But
Yeah.
I may be 51, but I act like I'm 16.
Well, I was going to say, like, when it comes to alcohol, I feel like it's a societal thing. Like, you can't go out with having a drink. It's like, why not? Like, it's like if you haven't seen somebody for a while, hey, you want to go for drinks? It's like, well, can we just go out and talk? Like, why do we have to go for drinks? So it's like a very societal thing. And then, because we're in such a hedonic environment and you get out there and you may tell yourself that, look, I'm not going to drink, but then everybody around you is peer pressuring you. And then there's that, like, that, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you're tempted, all that temptation and everything around it. And that's why half the time I just don't go out. Yeah. Right? Because I'm the kind of person that can have just one drink. And I know that. I'm smart enough to know that. And so then I don't risk it. So I just don't go out.
Yeah. Yeah. Not used to. It's a problem I've had too. But I'm lucky. I have really good friends that they understand that I'm training and I don't like to drink when I'm training. They're not the type of people that at one time I said, it's not a big deal that I'm not drinking. It's like, what would you say if all I wanted to do was crack cocaine? You'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing that. It's the same thing.
Alcohol's poison.
I don't want to do those things at the moment, but I like to, like everyone else, I'll have a couple of drinks with my friends. It's not of issue, but when I'm training, it is.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like garbage.
Yeah.
Now, like my recovery from being my age after having a drink is not the same as when I was in my 20s, where you could wake up in the morning and do a 5K. No.
Or you just keep drinking to avoid the hangover and everything.
Yep.
That I've never been able to do that because like I was like I've had health issues from like a baby, right? Oh, okay. And so like I did have because I was addicted to drugs and everything when I was younger. And even though I was addicted, all my friends would be doing quote unquote benders or whatever. I never could do it because my body would be just so wrecked after one night. Like just after one night. And so like I was like the 50-year-old waking up in the morning not being able to
and
go about the day.
It hurts. Like hurts my joints.
Yeah.
It's I don't really get hangovers. It's like my joints. It's just it dehydrates me. And that's the other thing dehydration is horrible for me. I'm training because I have osteoarthritis in my left knee. Oh, like it's brutal.
Yeah.
It hurts so bad.
Do you take electrolytes?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And then, my knee does really, really well since I've been training because I built up a whole bunch of muscle around it. And this leg is smaller than this leg because this leg atrophied so much after my surgery and everything because I had ACL repair.
Okay.
But it's almost the same size. Like I'm
getting there.
We're getting there.
Strength is the same though?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's usually how it goes.
Yeah. But the funny part is when I do squats, I have the power probably to lift so much more than I do when I squat because of how much I can deadlift. Like usually if you can squat so much in your squats, you can almost do fairly much about the same. Or some people, their squats are so much more than their deadlifts, right? And I'm the complete opposite. And it's because
your deadlift's much more than your squat?
Yeah.
Same.
And
big time same.
My squat, but for women, it's usually your squats are your strongest for whatever reason. I don't know the mechanics behind it, but I'm the complete opposite. I could deadlift till the cows come home.
Yeah.
And I know my deadlifts are getting stronger and stronger. My squats are getting better technique-wise, which is giving me the confidence to lift more. But it's every time I squat, I think my knee is going to bust.
Oh, really?
Like it's this thing in my head.
Yeah.
Won't turn it off.
Yeah.
And I'm working so hard on it. And Matt has me doing pause squats on a box right now. And he counts like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. That was this week. And he'll laugh if he's hearing this because when I was down there, I was like, what am I digging for gold down here? Stay up. Like this is too long.
Yeah.
Because every single time I thought I'm going to get stuck. I'm not going to be. And every time I got up, every single time. And I felt the power to come up. So I thought, oh, geez, he's right again. Damn it.
I want to say 3 things let's talk about the mind in that instance, right? So like talking about your knee and where you got the surgery, did you ever see that paper where they did, I think it was like, I can't remember if it was the ACL or what it was, but they did the knee surgery. There was, I think, 7 people. They did the knee surgery. They filmed it and, stitched them up and showed them the video. Said we did the knee surgery. They went on and healed in the whatever time frame, like 3 months kind of thing. They never did the knee surgery, but they told them that they had done it. So that placebo effect.
Oh my gosh, I've never seen that.
Right. And then I'll try to find it for you. And then, because I have it saved I think on my hard drive. And then they did genetics. And so these people all came back, or they selected the ones out of the group that came back with optimal genetics. Like they didn't have an MTHFR defect. They told them they did. They said they had this MTHR defect and this is what it's going to affect, et cetera, et cetera. And they retested genetics 3 months later. They had that MTHFR defect. So the placebo effect. And then in terms of like the training where you said you're worried about getting stuck at bottom, I had a client one time. We were on the leg extension. And I think it was like 50 pounds. And she made it look like it was the hardest thing she'd ever done in her life. And I was like, there's no way you could be this weak, right? So when she wasn't looking, I increased it to like almost 100, I think. She did the exact same thing. It was all in her head, right? It was all in her head. Yeah. And so I think like when you have a trainer, especially someone like Matt, right? Matt is like, let's just be honest. Let's say like Matt's intimidating and you got something to prove to him because he's a big dude. You have that extra push in your mind. And so you like, even though you're kind of fighting yourself, it's like, oh, I did it, right? But then we were talking about remembering things. Then you just have to remember each time that, okay, I've squatted how many times? Yeah. I've sat down there how many times? And I've come up every single time. Right?
Yeah, and the other thing is when I do a competition, I don't like to know what I'm going to lift.
What do you mean?
So I'll know my openers, because I have to put them down before I get weighed in before the competition.
And this is like your weight you're talking for each lift?
Yeah, the weight for each lift. And then after I lift it, Matt will ask, how did you feel? Was that okay? And I'm like, no, I feel good. Or, that felt like crap. Or if I didn't make the lift, like in nationals, the first squat, which completely blew my brain because I was crap. And I was like, I am such a loser. I can't believe I bombed my first lift at nationals. Like I was so mad, but I got over it. It was okay because Matt was like, get over it. But then usually I don't want to know. So he'll write down the number, give it to them, and they'll load the bar and I'll go out and just lift it. And partially it's because if I think about it too much, I'll think about the number and then I won't make it in my head. So we've never talked about him doing that. It's just something that's happened, which I like. Yeah. Because I don't want to know. And usually it's because I don't count. Like I can't calculate what the what is on the bar fast enough anyway, because I'm like,
When you get up for the lift, yeah.
yeah, because I don't do well with simple math. Like I just don't. And so even in the gym, I'll be like, so that's
Yeah.
and it was in my head, and I still get it wrong. So often he'll just keep loading it, and then I'll just lift it, and then I'll be, what was that? And then he'll tell me, oh, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's not that I'm
That's a good tactic.
a moron when it comes, but I'm getting better at figuring it out on my own. But it's just, if I don't know about it and just do it, it won't affect me. But the knee piece, I was told I have osteoarthritis, and as soon as I was told that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
So I do agree that it's like a constant reminder, and I have quite the scar, too. So I'm like, and today it feels terrible.
You ever tried Boswellia serrata?
Who?
Boswellia serrata.
No.
It's a good natural anti-inflammatory. The research has shown that it's rated up with NSAIDs.
Oh, well, I'll have to get that before I leave.
Yeah, I can show you.
Write that down because I won't remember that. I use curcumin. Like I take that in.
So this Boswellia will act on a little bit different pathway. So, in where I got introduced to that was I was working with a man with terminal prostate cancer. They gave him 8 months to live, and he's 6 years now. He's still alive. Okay. And so we were actually featured on the news and everything and whatnot. And so it's interesting that you said when you were told about your knee, that was it. Mm-hmm. So I would go to the oncologist visits with him, and because he was getting the Lupron shot. And so I would go with him and talk with the oncologist and just watch him experience this and everything, which is not a pretty sight. Felt awful for him.
Yeah.
But I would, shall we say, interview some people at, not Tom Baker, what's the other one?
The one in Edmonton?
No, it's here in Calgary. Isn't there another cancer center? Or
I only know of the Tom Baker.
I can't remember. I'll have to remember after. But anyways, so I would go up to them, and so Alan Morrison was his name. They're working together. And this guy was just the absolute biggest goof ever. All he did was laugh. Like that's like literally, I thought he was going to pass out red and throw up. We would laugh so hard during our training sessions. I knew that was a huge component of him surviving this, of him winning this battle. So you go in and you talk to these individuals, and the moment you are told you have cancer, you just this is what they would express. That's done. Accept their fate. As we all know, how the mind affects the physiology, especially in states of negativity. And so everything just got worse from that point on. And then they ended up dying. Where Alan refused. He refused, and he continued to paint. He continued to dance. He continued to laugh his ass off over the dumbest stuff, right? And I know that was the massive contributor, right? Like obviously we changed. I pulled a lot because he would dance way too much. He would do way too much. So I pulled a lot of activity, nourished the hell out of him. One thing was Boswellia serrata. Like he could never get rid of the swelling. Within like 3 days, all the swelling was gone with Boswellia serrata and just changing the diet. Because there is a lot of research on cancer in Boswellia serrata. But yeah, it was like a lot of them were just like, why bother? Or like take a diabetic, for example. Like we know type 2 diabetes can be reversed. They've even reversed type 1 diabetes, right? And so as soon as the doctor tells you got type 2 diabetes and they give you like a medication and you're like, oh, well, I have this medication. I can eat whatever I want then.
Right.
Right. And you do still have a handful of doctors saying type 2 is not curable.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is, that's not what I teach my students for sure.
Yeah. It's totally reversible. Yeah. It's totally. Yeah. And then they might say, oh, like, it's like, what would you call it? Like remission, and then it came back. It's like, well, no, you and I could get diabetes if we just let everything shit to bed, right?
With type 1, there are some type 1 where it's not curable at all, especially if your pancreas is shut down.
Yeah, because that's like the genetic disorder, yeah. But they've done those with stem cells and everything.
They have.
Yeah, so that's where they've actually because you have, like, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've had this conversation with people. I'm like, are you actually type 1? Right? Or are you type 2? Because then when you get those people that reverse it was probably like, you were more type 2. But there are articles out there where they've taken type 1 born from birth, so predisposed genetically, and they have reversed that type 1 diabetes. Yeah, with stem cells and obviously a bunch of other stuff probably, but immunosuppressants for a while, but they were able to reverse type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is the mind. It's sort of the mind over matter for sure. Yeah. It's like I say, I had the surgery and then I had a friend who was in rheumatology who told me, you know that you're going to get osteoarthritis. And I was like, yeah, but I may not.
Yeah.
I was like, and then when I was diagnosed with it, you can see it on my x-ray. My knee looks so bad.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is I should never have looked at the x-ray. But as a nurse, I'm like, can I see my x-ray? And then I have my x-ray in my, my lectures and stuff. So, or I did, I had pulled it out, but it just is bone on bone for me.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt. The osteoarthritis doesn't hurt. It's the other pieces, the ligaments that sometimes hurt. Like today, it's my MCL that is bothering me today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I took my sister's dog for a walk yesterday, and he jerked, and I went one way, he went the other way. So now it hurts, of course.
Yeah.
But it'll be fine tomorrow. Usually it takes me a couple of days. Yeah.
Yeah, I always when you talk because that's obviously localized. When you talk like rheumatoid arthritis, for example, that can like heavily be linked back to a form of bacteria, not like Citrobacter, for example. So people like with high levels of that autoimmune bacteria can experience rheumatoid arthritis. And so I've had clients where we start to kill off that bacteria and their pain goes away. But then part of that protocol is an inflammatory process. So then you kind of like start pushing too much of a certain immune pathway. So we look like Th2 pathway. People who are more dominant in Th2 are going to have more organ-specific autoimmune diseases. So something such as rheumatoid arthritis. Where people who are more dominant in Th1 pathway, they're going to have more systemic, like lupus, for example, right? And so then that's when we look at modulating the immune system. So if you ever, I have yet to meet someone that says no to this. If you ever meet someone with a systemic autoimmune disease, like whether that be multiple sclerosis or the myelin sheath or lupus or whatever, ask them how mushrooms make them feel, like cordyceps, reishi, lion's mane, everything. Like I said, I'm sure they're out there, but I've yet to meet one of them that has not said that they feel worse. They feel worse when they take mushrooms. That's because it acts on Th1. So then they promote more of that immune pathway over signaling, contributing to the autoimmune disease. And they break out rashes and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So then you want to look at modulating, giving like other specific nutrients, because also too, because like this is your first podcast, remember, I'm never meaning to patronize you. This is also for like the viewers. So when you're talking, like Th1 is going to be your viruses and your pathogens, your infections and cancer. So that's why I was kind of like laughing about the whole COVID situation. Like when you go online and you saw like I'm not pro-vax or anti-vax, do what the hell you want, but there was like a supplement list that was like, you don't need the vaccine, just take these supplements. First of all, there's activated charcoal in there, right? So let's just negate all of these supplements. But all of these supplements were promoting Th2, which is not responsible for fighting something like COVID. That's responsible for things like toxins and metals and bacteria, right? And so that's like when you're dealing with someone like with an overgrowth, you have to support Th2, but then you can push too far, then you have to come back and balance this way and just modulate that immune system, because like that's what in my experience, it's a huge complication in our societies. It's our, like take omega-3s. We read, omega-3s are super healthy. Here's what they do for the brain, the cardiovascular system, muscle, whatever. So people start popping a ton of omega-3s. And Matthew and I were just talking about this on Friday on the podcast. I learned that you could really mess up that ratio. There's such a thing as too many omega-3s. And if you have somebody that has a chronic inflammatory, so like have you heard of CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome? If you have that, you actually want a 4-to-1 omega-6 to 3 ratio, because you need that immune signal to get in there and break down what's causing that inflammation. So if you're constantly throwing an anti-inflammatory signal at it while things are still in there, this is how I put it. You're trying to bring in those fancy IKEA cabinets into your renovated kitchen before you've torn out the old cabinets. So we got to get in there and tear them out. So we use things like safflower oil and whatnot to increase that healthy omega-6, that is, though, not your McDonald's and everything, to break down. And then we look at modulating and balancing out. And then we find that nice ratio of omega-6 to omega-3.
Yeah, I take omega-3s.
Yeah, and most people do need to. In no way, shape, or form am I saying don't take omega-3s. But
take that way.
like myself was a perfect example. I became obsessed. So not only was I supplementing omega-3s, but I drink at least 60 milliliters plus of oil a day, whether it's olive oil, walnut, flaxseed, MCT oil, right? So I'm getting and grass-fed, grass-finished beef and salmon and cod. So I'm getting lots of omega-3. So I don't even supplement. I don't need to. Because my omega-3 ratio is high enough. Because I was doing that, and I'm like, why is my inflammation not resolving?
You know, it's interesting. Every time you talk about the gut mapping and figuring all that, I would love to find out what my gut is doing now.
So worth it.
I would love to find out what, because my gut feels pretty good. Like I say, usually, I was diagnosed with IBS, right? I had, you know, if I got stressed out, I would get stomach pains, I would have gas, constipation, diarrhea, like you name it, I was on antidepressants. But my 30s were a disaster.
It sounds like.
And after I had my child, I had postpartum depression.
Mm-hmm.
So I went on antidepressants for 3 months, and then I took myself off. I was like,
how was it coming off?
It was fucking awful. Excuse my French or language. It was terrible.
That's the right words.
But I just weaned myself because I know how, because I had to do it before. Because in my late 20s, I was on an antidepressant. I was on Effexor, which Effexor causes your blood pressure to go up. Mm-hmm. It's like long term. So when I found that out, my doctor was like, oh, we got to take you off this because my mom has high blood pressure. So, and I have really good blood pressure, like 110 on 70, always. It's always low. But I don't like antidepressants for me. I think they work for other people. But it's just, my gut was just reacting to everything. And it wasn't until, I hate to admit this, but it wasn't until I started not drinking as much that my stomach got better. And I also was drinking, when I did my PhD, I was up to like 12 to 14 cups of coffee a day. Yeah. And people laugh, they go, yeah. And I'm like, yeah.
I've seen it.
And I'm like, if you've ever written a dissertation, or if you've, which took me 6 months of pure writing, or if you've ever gone through candidacy, I lost 14 pounds in like 3 weeks just preparing for candidacy.
What I call PhD is fucking hard degree with a P. And I never even taken one. I just seen it.
We call it perihipular disproportion, right? Or piled higher and deeper. It's the usual. But yeah, it was like you live on potato chips and wine.
Whatever gets you by.
Or a mass amounts of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And so my gut was just rotten. It was just rotten. And so, like I say, for me, you know, having a couple of drinks is not a problem, but going back to the way I was maybe 10 years ago, you know, it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah. And like, when you talk like depression, like a lot of people don't understand, like when you mentioned, like you hate to admit, like, but removing alcohol helped, because not only like are we eating away at the guts where a majority of the serotonin is produced, but also high levels of cortisol affecting the thyroid and everything. But what always something that drives me insane is like the whole depression conversation. I'll never forget when this was going around. It's like, this is what depression looks like. And it was like Robin Williams, Chris Farley, Mac Miller, and they're all drug addicts or alcoholics.
That's not true.
Right? And so like, I'll recommend people like, oh, maybe like, obviously, yes, we have to get to the root cause, but acutely, maybe we can do something like St. John Wort's or 5-HTP, depending on the individual, or inositol. People don't know that inositol, because they usually think of hormones. It also helps restore serotonin receptors. So it can help with that as well. But like, they'll be like, oh, I don't know, I'm just going to go take this medication from my doctor. And I was like, well, can you even tell me what SSRI means? And they'll be like, well, no. I'm like, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So, right. So like, for those that don't know, like when you look, how I explain that whole system and why antidepressants and like the suicide rate is so high coming off of them is because when you take an SSRI, it prevents that reuptake into the pre-neuron. So more is inclined to go to the post-neuron and make its way down the chain because you have your synaptic cleft. Right. But when serotonin is within that synaptic cleft, which is a small space between the two neurons, you have what I explain is like very generalized 3 fates. Either A, it gets reuptaked, B, it gets broken down by monoamine oxidase, or C, it gets taken into the post-neuron, which then becomes a pre-neuron.
Right.
Well, SSRIs will block that reuptake, but your body's super smart. So it realized, okay, why is there all of a sudden a surge of serotonin? We're not really, it doesn't make sense. So you begin to increase MAO and desensitize the receptors in the brain. It's the same thing with like birth control. Like I do Dutch tests with clients, so dry neurostatic competence hormones. Practically every female on birth control and on a hormonal birth control has no hormones because the receptor got desensitized. So it's the same thing. Yeah. So when you come off of that antidepressant, you have no serotonin. And it's like you just ultimate depression. Like ultimate depression.
I kept it very slowly.
Yeah.
Very, like it took, I was on it for when I had postpartum depression. I was on it for 3 months. And I just, like I said, I took myself off. It took me 6 months.
Yeah.
Because that's how slow, because the last time it was too fast.
Yeah.
And I sort of had a rebound effect. But for me, depression sort of falls in line with anxiety. Mm-hmm. So I haven't had depression or feelings of depression since postpartum depression. Mm-hmm. But I do have high levels of anxiety and I can feel myself getting overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And so when that happens, like I said, when I finished being associate dean, which again wasn't the job, it was the dealing with some of those concerns our students have. I could feel myself just going, tanking. And so that's why I started training. And for me, that training itself is what keeps my mind from going to those places it shouldn't go.
Yeah.
Right? Where I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. Mm-hmm. I'm not rich enough. I don't do enough. Right? And then you just sit there and there's a term, perseverate. And you sit there in this cycle and you can't get out. It's like you keep hitting all these walls. Whereas if I train, I don't have that. I feel good.
Yeah.
And I feel proud, right?
Yeah.
And of myself. And I don't rely on other people to feel good.
Yeah.
To feel proud of myself. Mm-hmm. Which is, I've never had suicidal tendencies. I've never had those sort of level of depression. But it was enough that it was like, I don't want to leave my house. I'd rather just sit here and drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so earlier on, like some of my friends that I had in my, they're still my buddies, but in my late 20s, I would say to them, don't let me drink alone, right?
Yeah.
Because it just means I'm that sad. So you need to come down here. And so, or I'd text them because they lived in the same apartment building, and my buddy Jilly would come down. We'd play like World of Warcraft or whatever it was on the computer. And we would drink because I'd have a glass of wine, and at that time I smoked. So we drink and we'd go out on the balcony, have a smoke. But I wouldn't drink that whole bottle by myself.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's, and I love to talk about that because I think it's healthy that people understand that, it's okay to have a drink. It's okay to drink with your friends. It's just understanding what your own limits are.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And no one is perfect. And I don't judge other people for what they do. I love other people. I want them to be who they are. And so, but for me, training it's like eating.
Yeah.
It's like sleeping. It's
just natural.
Even if I stop powerlifting, which who knows how long this will last. I'm older. I've only been doing this for 4 years. Mm-hmm. 5 years now, and only really competing for the last 2.
Okay.
2 or 3. I might not do this forever, right? The powerlifting, but I will always train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would
always.
you say, because you mentioned like it helped with like the depression, anxiety stuff.
Yeah.
I've always thought of this because like I'm going to say it in this term so it kind of makes sense. I'm not knocking anyone, but it's kind of known that power lifters, and I'm definitely not saying you're very sweet, but have an ego
Well, you don't
almost,
know.
right? Yeah, fair, true, that is true. But almost have an ego. Like everybody's got an ego, but I always feel like if you can lift that substantial amount of weight, of course you're gonna walk around with your chest up high. That is probably extremely, like that's probably a lot of confidence. Like I'm watching some of the guys at Kings, and just like. I couldn't even I would be exhausted just loading that barbell and watching them lift it for 3 reps. And it's like, yeah, I feel like I would walk around with my chest pretty high as well. So do you feel like building this strength really helped with that?
Well, I have 2 things to say about that. The first is, when I first went to Kings and watched, and I was training there, I felt, I'm not anywhere in the class of these people. They must think I'm this little old, housewife who's going through a midlife crisis and is doing this kind of thing. Or that was at first, and I was just in awe of how, and some of the female powerlifters there are amazing. Well, now I can almost lift what they lift, not the men, but the women for sure. Not all of it, but I'm pretty much up there. But so I was hugely intimidated. I was at first I was like, I kind of want to go back to the old gym. like I was like the king of the hill at that gym. That's how I felt. But I'm not an arrogant person. Like I would never go, look at me. I've never been like that. But then if you ask my sister, or if you ask my husband, or my best friend, they'll all say the same thing. After powerlifting, I am not the same person. I am more confident as a person. I'm not scared to try new things. Yeah. Like I went to Mexico with my husband and my best friends and their partners, and I did a zip line. Like I'm terrified of heights, but there I was, and and it wasn't a little zip line. It was like once you start, you have to zip line all the way to the end. It's like a half an hour of zip line. Could have killed my husband, but we did it. I did it. But I would never have done lots of things in my life. I wouldn't have done without having this confidence. That said, I don't know what people think of me at the gym. I don't know what they thought of me at nationals or anything else, because to be honest, this is the arrogance that comes out. I don't really care.
That's not arrogance. That's wisdom. That's that's because you know exactly what's going to happen if you start worrying about what other people think.
I lie. There are a couple of powerlifters across Canada, especially in Ontario, that I not idolize, but I think I'd love to do that. That I saw at nationals that threw me for a loop. I was like, oh my god! But I don't have delusions of grandeur, and I do have elements of where I would care what they thought to a certain extent, because I compare myself, which you should never do. But I totally don't care what people think of me at this age. 20 years ago, I'd be so worried. I'd be like, is my hair out of place? I got to color my gray. Now I'm like, I don't really, really? I don't care anymore. But they'll all tell you, especially my sister for sure, that my confidence is not what it was. Or the opposite. It's so much improved, because I was very much couldn't believe I could do much. I've been sort of that, I'd rather see other people be in the spotlight than myself. I'd rather put other people up there. So to be asked to be on a podcast, I was like, why? Why would Curtis ask me? at first. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe again, my brain would say, maybe I have something to offer. Maybe there is something that I can share. Whereas, like I say, 10 years ago, I'd be like,
you know, what's funny about that is I want to say two things to that. I'll say first while I'm thinking about it is I actually had thought of you, right? And I reached out to Matt, and like right when I thought of you, because you know Tracy that I train in the gym, yes. She's like, hey, what about having Sydney on your podcast? I was like, I already thought of it, like because I actually wasn't familiar with the nursing at first, and that sparked my interest even more. But I definitely wanted to talk about the powerlifting. But I was also going to say is I created an Instagram post like a while ago, and it was like, what has the gym done for you? And like I liked the responses, because most people are going to go to the gym because they want to lose weight or get a six-pack. They're never going to talk or like think that going to the gym is going to enable them to feel safer and stronger and more confident and do things that they never thought they would have done, even if it's just zip lining on vacation and whatnot. And so like, that's really awesome to hear that, you know, it's affecting all these like aspects of your life away from the gym.
But in total transparency, when I first started training at the Y with Matt, my number one things, I can't be this fat. And I wasn't huge, like in the way it sat on my body, but I was not comfortable. And I was like, it was for me. Everyone's different, but for me, I didn't feel comfortable. So it was when we started to figure out that I actually had a lot of muscle underneath all of that, that it started to click that maybe I have potential, because I've always been, you know, somewhat physical my whole life, like soccer, ballet, like everything. And my husband's extremely active, plays basketball. Even now, we're the same age, and he's always trained. And I always was like, no, you go to the gym. It's fine. I always put his training way before mine, which was none. I never worked out, really. I might have walked the dogs or had a membership and kind of rode the stationary bike. Thought I was working out, you know. And never really did weights, but I did. But I've always had a good muscular structure, because I used to lift weights in high school, because I was on the track and field, and our coach made us lift weights. And because we were sprinters, because I'm so short, I was a sprinter. But I used to play basketball, but I got thrown out of the league for being too violent.
The short people are always the most violent.
Kind of broke some ribs on another girl, but whoopsie, sorry. But you know, so I had a good structure, but the confidence came even before I started lifting really well, and even before I was like, oh, I made it to nationals. It happened within a year of just going to the Y. Like, that's when it all started I felt way better about myself, because funny enough, I weigh the same now as I did 5 years ago. I weigh exactly the same. Actually, I see that all the time. To lose a little bit, because I'm trying to lean out a little bit, but for my next competition, but I weigh exactly the same.
I always say this to women: you will never weigh the weight that you want to weigh, because you are building muscle. You will never get to that weight. So but that's a really big like mind fuck for them, because they see this higher weight, not understanding that through the years that they've been trained, they have built muscle tissue. So it's like, you will never get to that 120 pounds that you want to be. You would have to starve yourself and destroy muscle tissue to get there. But it's very hard for them to like kind of accept that, because we get so tied up in the scale or whatnot. So that's great that you mentioned that, because, you know, like so many people are just can't get comfortable with that, knowing that like you're going to be heavier. That's why it's body composition. Like, yes, we use the scale as a tool, but it's not the end all be all, right? It shouldn't really be your goal, unless it's like making a weight class or something. That's an entirely different story.
That's right? It's totally different. And, you know, but I can't speak for other women. I can only speak for myself. But how I was brought up in the 70s and 80s, because like I'm a Gen Xer, that you can't be fat. Like, fat is bad. You just, like I said, fat was bad, right? And you shouldn't, like, and my dad was obese. Like, he was a huge man. He's a little guy now, but, huge man. Drank a lot, smoked. My mom smoked. Like, such a different generation than now. But we just was like, I was anti, you can't be fat. And so I had to get that out of, it takes a lot for me as a female and how I was brought up to get that out of my head.
Yeah, okay.
And for me, it's not about being comfortable in my skin and what, I forget what it's called, body
Dysmorphia?
Positivity is the big thing right now. But for me, it isn't about that. It's about being healthy, right? Which seems so lame when you say it that way, but I've always been a heavier person. Like, I've always been, I think I weighed 119 pounds when I was in like high school or something. But we lifted weights, and then you hang on to that weight when you're younger, and then you start to lose all that muscle mass. If you have a surgery like I did, and then you get it into your head, oh, I can't squat. I can't do that. It'll hurt my knee. I can't run because it'll hurt my knee. I could only use the recumbent bike. Otherwise, everything's going to hurt my knee. And now it's like, well, it's going to hurt my knee, but we'll see what happens.
I'll live.
I know that it will recover because I know over time, that it will recover. But I don't think of the scale anymore. I think about how I look, in the mirror, what the muscles are like. And I know my husband has always said to me, quit weighing yourself. Don't, like, he's such a great supporter. He's like, it doesn't matter. I love you anyway. Like, he has been the best. But I do know now we're both very active. And so it's helped our relationship for sure. And then on top of that, the biggest thing for me is knowing that I have to watch that if I am losing a little bit of weight and things are changing, that I don't feel as muscular. Like, my brain will do that. It's like that body dysmorphia you talk about. And it's funny, I'll go, oh, I want to get bigger. I want to, that kind of thing. And I know how long it's going to take me and how hard I have to work, because it's harder when you're a little bit older. I had someone say to me, well, you can't gain muscle when you're in your 50s. Well, not so sure that's true.
You might not be able to.
I can, and I think everyone else can. It's just what do you want to do with it? My muscle is for powerlifting. If I stop powerlifting, sure, I'm not going to have as much muscle, but I'm still going to be active. I'm still going to train. I'm still going to do the things because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel happy. I'm a master's too. It's not like I'm in the open where the competition is massive.
Yeah.
There is competition. Of course, there's competition at the M2 level, but I just want to see how I do in the next competition. I would really, one of my biggest goals, which, maybe it isn't for other people, is just going 9 for 9. So 9 lifts. What
exactly does that mean?
So you have your 3 main lifts, and each of those lifts, you have 3 chances to at least get your proper amount of white lights, right? So you need either 2 white lights or 3 white lights to have it to be a good lift.
And so because I'm not super familiar with powerlifting, and I don't believe at this point in time my audience really is either.
Okay.
So what are they looking for? Is it like to get those 3 white lights, what do you have to achieve within that lift?
Oh, well, it's so much. It's so technical. It's very different than what you would do in the gym. So someone who says, I can squat this amount of much in the gym, and I'm like, but can you? You can, but you have to go for squats. You have to hit a certain depth where you're just below 90 degrees, so that you have a crease in your hip and a crease in your knee, is how I think of it. So just below that 90 sort of spot. Your knees have to be straight before you start. Your knees have to be straight when you end. If they say rack, you have to rack. If they say squat, you squat at that time. If you rack before they say rack, it's 3 red lights. Like bench is really, really strict now. So whereas it was before, but now with bench, they also have a depth with your arms. So the arch is still allowed, of course, but you can't arch as much as people have in the past, so that your bench might have been that deep. Now you have to go much deeper because you have to make sure that when you bench down, it's at the same level as your shoulders, the top of your shoulders when you're on your back. I've never had that problem because my arch is not as good as it was when I was in my 20s.
Fair, okay.
And so we've always trained
in that range.
In that range where I have longer arms than most people who are built like me. So I've always had to train so that I have sort of a more my positioning for my arms on a bench are not as wide. I have a more narrow grip. And so by doing that, I go really far. Like my knees, my elbows go deep. So I don't have to worry about that. Yeah. But bench is difficult because you have to, when you rest the bar on your chest, it has to come to almost to a rest. Okay. And then they say press. So it depends on the ref. The ref might be like, as soon as you touch, they say press. Others go, as soon as you touch, you're like, hello? Are you going to say
one
press?
Mississippi, two
Mississippi. That's right. So when I train with pauses.
Okay.
So that's all Matt. That's not me. If it were me, I'd be like,
going through.
But because I do that, I can stay there forever, and I know that I have the power.
Come back up.
I just have this issue with my peach coming off the bench. Oh, really? It's the other thing. If your butt comes off, it's a no lift. Okay. So there's so many moving parts. Yeah. Deadlift is a little bit straightforward. Yeah. You just got to go out there and pick it up and put it down. But you have to put it down when they tell you. And when you lock out at the top, your shoulders have to be back. Your knees have to be locked out. They can't be bent. And so that one is a little bit easier for me because I tend to have the strength to lock myself out.
Okay. So what would get you no lift in a deadlift?
If you jerk the bar up your legs.
Okay.
So if you hitch.
Oh, yeah, and he's not quite making it.
You can't hitch.
Okay.
It's either smooth or...
So for those that don't know, that's like if you're struggling to lift and you're trying to pull it up more. Okay, yeah.
So the strong men are allowed to hitch.
Okay.
And so you see the women and the men hitching up there.
Okay.
But you can't do that in powerlifting. Okay. Even if it's a little bit of a hit and they see it, you're done. Okay. The same with bench. If you're pushing up and you pause and it looks like you've come down and then you push up, that's a no lift because you've gone do like that.
Okay.
So those are the little mistakes. Like I did that once with a bench and I missed a bench. And squat, it's always one squat I miss, which I didn't at Westerns. I did all 3. I couldn't believe it. And I made all my benches and then I missed my last deadlift because it looked like I did a little hitch. So at Nationals...
Did you actually or just looked like it?
It looked like it. I didn't think I had, but I'm not going to argue with them. They see it at a different angle than I would. I know Matt thinks it was a good lift. But at Nationals, I put baby powder on my legs. Okay. And then it's like butter. You're like...
Oh, really?
So, yeah, it made such a difference because in the gym, I think I did 155 or was it 152.5?
kg, right?
Yeah, kilograms. And
so that's what, 150? That's 300 something pounds?
Yeah, 300. I think 157.5 was like 320 plus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, but at nationals, my last deadlift was 150, as I said, 157.5. And I knew it was, but I'm not intimidated doing deadlifts. For me, it's like, like I like doing it to see what happens. And it just flew up. And I was like, I think I could have done 160. Like, it's amazing what adrenaline will do and those, but it was the powder. It was.
Well, now you know.
Now I know that the powder helps me. So I never really used it before.
Fair.
And I changed some angles a little bit from Westerns to help me with that.
What do you mean angles?
So with deadlifting, I don't squat down as far.
Okay.
I keep myself up so that when I stand up, I don't go hips first and then up.
Okay, yeah.
So now I'm a little higher, so all I do is stand up. And it made a big difference because my upper body, like my lats are I would say my strongest.
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned to use my legs properly when I deadlift.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before I was trying to use all my upper body strength because it is my just because of how I'm built. I have a short torso. I just, everything is massively packed. Sometimes my sister goes to King's because she trains with my coach, and she's a rock climber.
Yeah.
And she's the same way. We're just built the same. We're just like, and it's kind of that British sort of peasant working on the farm is where we come from. That's our people.
It's so funny that you say strong lats because like my good friend Sean and Sarah, like Sean, he's got ridiculously strong lats and he's from the UK, like ridiculously strong lats.
Yeah, I am much stronger in my upper body.
Yeah.
I would say, and I compensate
for
that. So my deadlift, I can use both, but squats are legs. And so I've worked really, really hard. They are my nemesis for sure. I would say it. Some of it, I would say 50% of it is mental.
Yeah.
But you put me on the other machines like leg press and I'm like, it doesn't do the same to my brain. It just doesn't do the same. Even safety bar squats I can do without worrying too much.
Yeah, see, for me, like, I'm the same boat. Like, my squat is pathetically weak, but it's also because my inflammation is high. When I get that inflammation down, then I notice some good strength in my legs. But yeah, my upper body is definitely much stronger than my legs, right? I hate it. I absolutely hate it because, like, that's what I was mentioning earlier. When I see these powerlifters lift this weight, I'm just like, oh, that must feel good. Like, squat that much weight. Like, it looks like it's hell, but at the same time, like, when you finish that lift, you're probably just like, oh,
and there's a lot of it too is I'm not a physics major, but a lot of it is physics. It's trying to figure out where that sweet spot is when you bench.
Yeah.
Like where it just goes.
Yeah.
If I miss it, I miss it. You can tell I'm like
struggling through.
Doesn't do it right. But usually I can hit it. But deadlifts for me, it really is that, pick it up and put it down mentality.
Yeah.
And, if I was going to say had any ego, it would be with the deadlift. And it's not that I go see what I can do. It's more I'm more proud of myself.
Yes. Rightfully so.
Very proud of that.
So let's go back to like the beginning. I'm curious, what was it like? Because it was the Y you said.
Yeah.
What was it like? So like your first gym session in the Y, did you have Matthew or did you work out a bit? So how'd you come across Matthew?
Oh, okay. So I had a membership at the Y and I had gone for about a week by myself because I was going for physio because I had hurt this knee. I actually had to go to the hospital and be had awake sedation. There's a way of saying it. I'm blanking. And to have my knee straight because it locked in a bent position after going tobogganing and all that. Anyway, so I was doing my physio in the gym and trying to figure out what I was going to do. I'm like, this is stupid. So I went home to my husband and said, I think I'm going to get a trainer. And he was like, oh, well, they're not, let's just go to the Y, because it was actually reasonably priced. It wasn't a big deal. And I put in my application, and on it said male or female. And I'm like, don't care.
Yeah.
Just put me with someone. And so I got put into his box, and then that's how I met Matt. And on the first day, I was just like chatterbox of, I can't do this. It was nothing positive. I don't remember saying anything positive.
Do you think it was nerves that were driving the negativity?
I think it was a lot of it. I was like embarrassed because I've never been this out of shape in my life. And you're sitting looking at someone who's in shape, who looks like he knows what he's doing. And here I am, this middle-aged woman who's just fat, and I'm a loser, right? Seriously, that's where my brain was at the time. So I'm like, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. And Matt was like writing things down and was like, well, I think you can. And I was like, okay, maybe. And then we started training. And within, I think it was a couple of months, you could start seeing that my weights were going up really fast. And I think there's that period when people train, they do all these when they start, you see all these really great progressions and then they plateau, and is the theory they say is behind it. But I just kept building and building because I had a good base. It was just lost after a little bit. And it was Matt that said, have you ever thought of powerlifting? And I was like, well, I don't even know what that is. I know what Olympic lifting is, but I have no idea what you're talking about. So then I started watching it, and it was all men, right? It was all men. And then I found the women you can search through. So like Jen Thompson, who's the best female bencher in the world. She is amazing. She's from the US. And then Jessica Bittner from Saskatchewan. She's like our Canadian champion for the Open. And I found Holly Lissette. She's our M2 national champion. She's the one that I look up to more than anyone. There's like Jody McPeak. I watch her lift because I look on Instagram. But it was then that I started seeing all these women lifters, and I thought, oh, okay, I suppose I could do this. But I waffled for a while. And then as I started getting better and better and my body started to change, I started noticing that I could actually deadlift. And we were at Renegade, was the gym we moved to.
Yes, yeah, I know that one.
Which is a great gym. But I started noticing that I was deadlifting more than other people in that gym.
Yeah.
I was like, this is interesting. And I was building muscle like because I just completely changed my diet.
Yeah.
Like I never ate breakfast. Or I would have a muffin, which is basically cake, right? And thinking that was nutritious.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't eat until supper time, and then I would eat too much. Like it was just nightmare. I should have kept a diary of what I ate back then, but it was awful.
I think that's most people.
Oh my God. I eat 6 times a day, I would say, but with three bigger meals.
Yeah. Okay.
Breakfast being almost my biggest.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, and then when COVID hit, because I entered my first little competition, and then COVID hit and it got canceled. Yeah. And so then my husband was like, well, we got to keep training because he's as addicted as I am. And so we had a little gym in our basement, and I didn't have a squat rack, but I had a deadlift bar, I had weights, I had, all those, and I just deadlifted. I would say 3 times a week. And it was during COVID that I got to my first 300 deadlift.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And I worked, that's all I did was bench and deadlift, bench and deadlift, bench and deadlift. And I had did a lot of I don't know what they're called, but you know those, they look like a toaster, or it's called a toaster. That's what Matt calls it, but you can change the weight on it. It's like a box.
Oh yeah, I
You
can
know those silly
understand.
things?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I used those in my basement. And I did.
The power blocks are
Yeah, yeah, because my husband had all this stuff and had trucked it, as he moved or whatever. And so I used those like crazy, and I would train probably every day.
Yeah.
Like I had training days, but I was like, I'm going to go downstairs, do some deadlifts, do some stuff, because it was what kept me going during all of our lockdowns.
Yeah. I was going to say, because nobody could go to the gym or anything. I know when lockdowns first hit, we were sneaking into Kings and everything, but then I can't remember who was the people that were locked, like the medical officers or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, Alberta Health Services.
Yeah, Alberta Health Services. They had it was the Bolton Vassner place across the road started reporting or whatever. So so then we had to stop.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I just found that I learned that I could do it myself too.
Yeah.
That I could train by myself. I train mainly with my coach now because it keeps me, especially for technique, because you can get really sloppy. And when I get sloppy, I get injured.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're under that kind of weight too, it's a lot different than if you're just like bodybuilding, doing bicep curls or a hack squat or something. When you're under a barbell with that much load.
I had my piriformis and my hip flexor. I had some issues with that when I did provincials last time. I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
But it's amazing after you've had a kid, you're like, psh, I can.
You've tolerated much worse.
I have tolerated much worse, but it's for sure. I just have to monitor those sorts of things, especially my hip, which is a little bothersome right now. So I have to go for a massage.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah, that's good.
To get that, elbowed through. But it's amazing. If you ask I would think most powerlifters have a massage gun. They have, I have all those things.
All the modalities, yeah.
Yeah. Just to keep healthy.
Yeah. So with your first session with Matthew then, what was it like as your first session with the trainer? Like you mentioned that you felt like you said nothing but negative, but after the end, how was that overall experience? Because like a lot of people are intimidated to work with.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I just thought he would probably not take me as a client.
Why? Because of the negativity?
That negativity, but B, because I was at the time, I thought I was so pathetic.
Okay.
Because you're under this impression that you have to be able to do what they do.
Okay, fair.
At least that was my impression. If I can't do what they do, then I'm just a big loser.
Okay.
And then some of it is I have this internal competitive nature. I've always had. But that's what I felt. I just thought there was that. And then I thought, what if the people in the gym think I'm pathetic?
Okay.
So a lot of it is that. And I remember after my first session, and I got a lot of positive reinforcement where things like, I remember saying to Matt, I cannot squat, and I will not squat.
Well,
will not is really strong is what I got. I got, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can squat. By the end of the first one, I didn't squat ass to grass, but I did do, a lunge kind of thing. It wasn't the most comfortable thing, but, I was able to do it.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, well, okay, maybe. I also lifted more than I thought I could. Dumbbell and me, I like free weights. Free weights, I love doing that. Sometimes I have trouble getting them up when they're heavier because I don't know why. I've got some serious body.
Oh, like the initial. Yeah.
I have to swing myself.
Yeah.
Once they're there, I'm very stable.
Do you kick with your knees?
I do.
Yeah.
But it just all wrong. I've had people help me.
It's the timing too. A lot of people mess up the timing to like roll and then kick.
You don't catch it properly. I've had people help me before. Like, will you help me, please? Just this is so sad. But yeah, by the end of it, I felt very comfortable. A lot of it too, you worry about, what does this person know?
Okay.
Like, how knowledgeable are they? Are they gonna just, shoot the shit with me and not actually look at what I'm doing and actually help me? Because I was serious. I remember he asked me my goals, and I was like, I want to lose a little bit of weight. Who doesn't? But at the end of the day, I just want to be healthy. I just want to feel healthy. I want to feel like I can go bike riding with my daughter. And I actually think I said, I just want to make sure my daughter looks at me and says, that's what you should do. I don't want her to see me as this lump that sits on my couch all the time.
It's a role model.
Yeah. That was my biggest thing, because my daughter had said to me, Mama, you're always so busy. Because I said to her, how come you don't want to play with me? Because she plays with her dad a lot, or she did when she was really young. Well, Mommy, you're always so busy. I was like, oh, yeah, that was also the other reason I left the associate dean job.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I wanted her to know that, I can go outside and play with you, and I'm not going to be too tired. Not going to be too, worn out just from playing in the backyard kind of thing.
Yeah, it's amazing how many like the people that I've worked with, parents, that is like a number one goal. There's like, I want to be able to run. Like, of course they want to look better and everything, but they want to be able to play with their child and keep up with their child and like climb hills and go for bike rides and all that kind of stuff. Because like, you're just going to enjoy life that much more. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And like when I was young and I had all my health issues, like I had an extremely severe case of sleep apnea. I stopped breathing 71 times an hour, and like the oxygen levels, there were sometimes it would hit 75%. The doctors didn't know how I was still alive.
Oh my God.
Amazed that I had a heart attack, an aneurysm, or any of that stuff. It was a miracle. But like I would babysit my nieces, and I just like could not stay awake. No matter what, I'd be so tired. And they'd want to play and do anything. So I would just like, let's just watch a movie. And then I'd fall asleep. And you wake up and they're stealing things out of the cupboard and they're wrecking things. And it was like, it was so bad. Like you just felt awful because you're just like, I do not have the energy to do this. It was so stressful. And obviously I'm not a parent, but so like I kind of understand that aspect of you just want to be able to play with your child.
Yeah. Like just even taking her to the park, I'd be like, I'd rather just stick her in front of Elmo.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But it was because I was tired from work and I was just physically just done. I think my body was like, you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice. And it's so funny. People talk about hitting rock bottoms. My rock bottom was when I missed the Mother's Day at the daycare. And I was so tired. Couldn't sleep. It just... I was not nice to be around. I didn't think my husband would never say that publicly, but I'm sure I wasn't nice to be around. I was forgetful, which is worse now, but it's just as you age, you lose your memory.
So you pregnant alone.
But I think for me, just that, even that first session for me, I realized that having a trainer that would say, no, you can. Yes, you can do these things. And you will be able to do these things. And now my best squat was 100 kilogram squat. What's that? 120 some odd pounds. For me, that's freaking amazing. For others do 140 pound, like that are in my age group. Yeah. I don't care. Yeah. I'm pretty happy with that, given that I couldn't even get up from a chair without feeling massive knee pain. Yeah. So it's been therapeutic for my knee to lift, but it's also been so good for my confidence and everything else. And it doesn't hurt that, I may have a little bit of a role still because I had to eat a lot for nationals, but I have a six-pack.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had a six-pack in my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Whole life.
Mm-hmm.
People say to me, oh, that can't be true. It is true.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had that. I've had biceps and triceps and all of those things. And my legs used to be bigger than this before all this knee stuff. I used to have quite the massive quads, but I have a six-pack.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'll look in the mirror and go, yes, down, to myself. But I don't do that so that I can go on a cruise and show everybody that I have abs. I don't care.
How difficult was it for you to get up to that amount of food, both like physically and mentally?
Well, mentally, I'll start with the mental. It was hard to get over the carb count. Not the calorie count, but the carb count.
What was your highest amount?
My highest carb that I hit, I think it was 450 carbs, 450 carbs a day.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 450. Yep. Almost 500. Whereas now on a rest day right now, it's 150.
Okay.
And it's just 250 or 300, can't remember, on a training day.
Mm-hmm.
So, the protein count, that didn't matter. I like protein. I'm a carnivore to the end. But, yeah, the carb count, that was hard to get past because I was brought up that you should, fat isn't good and too many carbs aren't good,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so realizing that and getting over that, it wasn't a big deal. And then actually it was kind of cool because I would eat that amount of calories, which 3,500 calories, but I would still look smaller than most people.
Yeah.
And I was like, see, I eat food all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's food in my car right now. I don't know. There's, putting that together where you have to eat a lot of food to not lose weight, but to change the way your body looks.
Yep.
That was the key for me. It's not, it wasn't as soon as my brain turned that I'm not trying to lose weight, I'm trying to change the way my body looks.
Yeah.
That was just the big hurdle.
Yeah.
Eating that amount of food, there were times I had to force myself to eat.
Yeah.
And I would got over it because my snacks, I would make like a shake.
Okay, yeah.
So I put fruit in there and maltodextrin. I put in like sugars and orange juice and stuff like that to try and bring up my calorie count.
Yeah.
My carb count. And that would help. But if I had too much of a liquid replacement, as it were, I would still feel hungry.
Yes.
So I had to find a way of balance it out so that I would have something that was more with texture to eat and then have a shake. Mm-hmm. Plus, if you make all that shake, you end up with like 2 or 3 full. So I would switch it up a little bit. I'm not big on the power bar because they make me constipated.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people to avoid those things.
They're hard to eat. They're so dense.
Mm-hmm.
And if they taste really, really good, then there's something wrong.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. The better it tastes, the worse it is for you, most likely. Yeah, I asked like why is it so like there are times when I do specific training phases that are extremely glycolytically demanding because I want to fill out for like a photo shoot or something. And I think the highest amount of carbs I ate in one day was 1,500 grams of carbs. And it was just like, like I did use a lot of like highly branched cyclic dextrin, so carb powder and everything. But even so, like trying to fit in that food, and then like you cap the night off with like 50 pieces of sushi, and you're just in gluttony. You're like, oh.
That was my thing. I would have like an extra meal once a week. I got, but it wasn't a cheat meal where it would replace another meal. It was an extra
more
meal.
Food.
For me, it was sushi.
Yeah,
just salmon, and I would have that, and that's what got me to almost too much weight because I this close to not making weight at nationals. Yeah. Because I'm 69 class, and I weighed in at 68.85.
Oh.
Yeah. And I thought because we had my weigh scale at the hotel, we brought it, like I brought it in the plane, and my weigh scale was I think there was something wrong with it, but we got a new one, so we're happy now. But it was weighing me a little less than usual, I think.
Okay.
And plus, you're at a different altitude. Things change with that. Plus, I went and weighed my scale on the scale they had at the weigh place. And I seemed to be okay. I was sitting at just 68, in and around, just below 68. And then I ate breakfast that morning because I was lifting at 1. And I might have been retaining a little water. Could have. I was a little stressed out. I was, you're a little, and I went pee right before my name was almost to be called to be weighed. So I went to the bathroom and peed. And then when I went in there, I always take everything off just because you don't need that extra unless you're going to under.
Yeah.
So I took everything off and the scale's going up and up and up. And I'm like, oh, like I literally went, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And so I had a hair thing, like my ponytail, and I whipped it off, threw it on the table, and then the ref was like, oh, Sid. I was like, woohoo. No, because you have to make weight. Or you can't.
Do they give you, like in MMA, they give you an opportunity to make weight if you don't? Do they?
Yeah, there is a rule.
How much time do they give you?
Oh, we looked it up. I think it was like you get an hour.
Oh, that's not bad.
Maybe that's too long because I was going to lift within. You could come back. Yeah, I can't remember now, but I know there is a clause. I was like, oh no!
Just run right to a sauna as fast.
Oh yeah, there is one in that place, so I was like ready to go. But I came out and I said to Matt, I'm like, oh my god, it was 85. But he's like, oh, yeah, it was funny. And then we went back to my room, and my husband and my daughter were in there, and I said to Shriana, I'm like, oh my god, I just made it. He's like, oh, we were all
ponytail.
Holy, but I don't want to be that close again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be that close again.
So Nationals was pretty recent then, wasn't it?
Nationals was in February.
Okay. And what did you place?
I placed 3rd.
Great job.
Yeah.
And is that your first Nationals? Mm-hmm. Right on. Yeah. And where was it at?
Vancouver. Well, it was in Richmond.
Okay.
Just by the airport.
And Matthew went with you, didn't he? Yeah, nice.
Yeah, we paid for him to go.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, because I wanted him. Mm-hmm. He says certain things that I listen for. Mm-hmm. Usually it's one word, and it's up.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference because when I hear that, and that was awesome. And then when I got a national record too for bench.
Great job.
Yeah, and when you watch the video, you can hear up, mm-hmm. and then you can hear when I got it, you can hear my husband go, yeah.
So you know what's interesting about that is when I was because as you know, when you're unhealthy, you are very negative, right? Mm-hmm. So when I was a very negative human being as well, so I kind of understand where you're coming from. And I used to get so mad when people would say up, because I'd be like, well, where else the fuck is she going to go, right? Sideways? And then, but as I, became healthier and less negative and realizing that word I see why people yell it now, because there is something about that kind of oh yeah, okay, come on up, right? It is motivating. It's just the simplest thing, and just saying up. And because I even found myself doing it eventually, training clients. I'm like, up.
It is something about that word for me, for mm-hmm. sure. I don't really hear the up on the deadlift as much, but the other two for sure. I'm sure if I was struggling, I would hear it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there are certain things as well that I tell myself too as I go approach the bar. There are things in my head. If you watch other people when they lift, they're all hyped up and they're like, oh, they go. in there and they sniff their ammonia and they go firing out there and they're all like, rah, 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 rah. And I have the complete opposite like reaction.
Yeah.
Much more, okay, just remain calm. You can do this. I have this internal dialogue that is like, you're not going to fuck it up. These people are not here. And if they are, they're all naked. Like, you can't. And I often will say it's like being in a classroom with 150 students. You know what you're doing. This is for you. This is like, I literally am focused on exactly what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I get it, I'm like, yay. But I don't do the, because for some reason, I'm just not that person.
Yeah.
When I got the national record in the video, I actually looked like I was about to cry.
Really?
Yeah, because I was like, I didn't have this, I'm the best person, you people suck. It was, while I did that, like I just have such a different reaction.
Yeah.
I think to myself, maybe I should just jump and holler, and it's just not who I am. My friends would say, you get a tequila, and said, yeah, she's loud. Dare me to do anything, I'll do these things, but I'm just not that person. So
have you done the smelling salts?
Oh, every time.
For every lift, yeah? And it keeps you calm?
Squats, I tend not to.
How come?
Because it does make me go
just over agitated a
little too much. Except at Westerns, for the third one, my third squat when I did 100 kilograms, I did only because I needed that extra push.
I've never done it.
So it's hilarious. I made my friends do it after nationals. They had to do a shot and then.
It's a good thing a nurse was there.
It was pretty funny. But yeah, it doesn't bother me at all. Yeah. It actually, I just go.
Just feel it.
I just, for deadlifts, it helps. It helps me just have intensity. For bench, it helps me have more intensity. Maybe it's something I should keep doing for squats, but I'm so nervous for that first squat because if you don't get the 3 lifts, you're out of the entire competition.
What do you mean the 3 lifts? Like all 3 within the squats? Okay, yeah.
Well, not all 3. So you'd have 3 chances to get white lights.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so usually what you do is you so if you can do it for myself, like I can do a 90 kilogram squat in the gym, should be okay. I should be able to hit depth and get 3 white lights. Then you're on the board, and then that number counts toward your total. If you don't do if you can't get a lift with at least 2 white lights after 3, you can keep competing, but none of your numbers count except for the none of your numbers count. So it's like if you do your 3 squats, you make it through, and you make it through all the bench, and then at deadlift, you miss all 3 of your deadlifts.
It didn't matter.
Yeah. So it's like you try and under-predict yourself at making an easy lift for your first lift. And so at nationals, I think it was 92.5 kilograms. Should have been do for me, and I missed it.
Oh.
I didn't hit depth.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like, oh, crap. Because it completely tanked my brain. Because I was like, oh, I'm a loser. Like, it's just my go-to. And so Matt was very strategic, and I did 92.5 for the second, because you get to repeat it. And I did it. Because I was like, I don't care if I sit on the floor, I am going to get on the board. And I did.
Yeah.
And then I did 95. And I could have done 100, but Matt just said in his brain, he was telling me after, that if you just hold on, if we can just do 95, get that on the board, you'll save your energy, and then you'll have more energy for the other. It was like, in nationals, it's very, sure, it's great, you're going to hit your PRs, but there's a lot of sort of gameplay that you're playing around with numbers, you're playing around with stuff. And Matt was trying to make sure that I at least walked away with a medal. I didn't even think I was going to have a medal. Given my competition, I was like, ew, this is not happening. I was just going to, I knew I could potentially do the national record. I knew that was in the cards. If I could just keep my ass on the damn bench, then I could do it. And so I knew that would happen, but I didn't think I would get a medal. So there was a lot of playing with numbers and calculations going on, and I just had my Rage Against the Machine in my hand playing, and I just went out and lifted what I was told to lift. And it all depended for the deadlift. It all depended what the person before me, what she lifted. And she missed her lift.
Oh, okay.
And it was our last lift. And because she missed, I got bronze because I hit my lift. So it was at least that was my understanding of what happened.
Okay, so the placing is your total weight?
It's the total, how much you lift.
Okay,
sure.
Through all
and
three
There's
lifts.
this other part, and then there's this other part called their PL points, and they are I think it stands for powerlifting points, but I'm not 100% sure because I'm still new at this stuff. But that placing is a calculation with how much you weigh. Okay. So they do this calculation, and so across Canada, for the M2s, I'm still in 4th place.
Nice.
Even though I came in 3rd nationally, I'm in 4th place for 2023.
So with the total weight though, but it's only let's say, because you get 3 attempts.
And it's your last attempt is what they count.
Oh, okay. So they don't count all the weights together. Okay. Okay. So now let's say you because you mentioned if you miss a lift 3 times, you're out. So would you still continue to lift afterwards though, for just the sake of it, or you just say, hey?
I think if it was a local competition,
okay.
Yes, but at a national, no. I would pack my bag, go upstairs, crack something to drink. Probably go buy some cigarettes. Like me. Yeah, I probably would.
Just to move on from it.
I'd be like, I'm gonna have a smoke because this is it would be just. Yeah.
Did anyone do that in the competition? Did they miss that?
There are a couple of people that did that. Yeah. You get a couple within it, and it's sad. Yeah. It's pretty sad. Mm-hmm. But you know what's great is people are still cheering them on. Mm-hmm. People are still saying, don't give up. I think that's what I would get. The M2 lady community is really, and I'm old school, so I say lady. Women.
What's M2?
M2 is 51 to 60 years of age.
Okay, so masters. Okay, yeah. Okay.
They're so kind. And even nationally, when I met all these really people that I've heard their names or seen their names, they're all so really nice, just lovely people. And then we all start lining up, and the game face comes on, and then you do all that, and then afterwards it's oh, you did so good, and da-da-da, are you going to volunteer? And we're doing this after, or you want to come, all the different things that it's just really, it's such a nice community, really great. And I especially like Alberta's community. Okay. They're pretty hilarious. Some good, funny people from both Calgary and Edmonton and across. Yeah, they're very nice, and they remember you. And the judges remember you, especially if you thank them. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't thank them. I always thank them. Mm-hmm. Even if I don't get a lift, sometimes at Westerns, when I didn't get that last deadlift, afterward, I went up to that ref and I said, I don't know if you know who I am. She goes, yes. Yeah, they know who you are. And I was like, what happened? What did I do? And she's like, oh, you did this little hitchy thing. And I got advice from her. And then when I was at nationals, she was running nationals with her husband, and she remembered me. Okay. And she was like, oh, hey, Sid. And she was like, have you been practicing your deadlifts? And I'm like, Lily, in my mind, I was thinking, little do you know, they're my favorite.
Yeah.
I do them all the time, or I want to do them all the time, and I really don't. I do squats cleanly to practice. But I was like, yeah, I'm going to use powder this time. I think that was great advice, because that was her advice.
Oh, she told you to use a powder. Okay.
She said that wouldn't have happened because she got stuck.
Yeah.
You got stuck on your legs. So she's like, use the powder, use the powder.
Okay. See what I like? I obviously, as you can tell, I know nothing about powerlifting, like the competition aspect of it, like as a trainer, I know, but where I like, because I kind of have a general idea of how good the community is from what I hear and whatnot. And this is what I like, because I hate bodybuilding. Like, I hate the community and like the competition of bodybuilding, but like the actual aspect of bodybuilding, it actually can create a lot of physiological responses to help someone heal, right? But when you talk about the community, you get these, because I've coached some people this stage, and like, especially females, you get them and they put just everything forth. They diet as hard as they can. They go through the struggles, and they invest all that money into suits and traveling and everything, and then they don't place because they didn't have a big head of hair or fake boobs, or they didn't sleep with the judge or something like that, right? And that's like why I hate bodybuilding. Like, that's why I hate bodybuilding. And so like when I've heard about like how good, like Matthew and him and I had gone out for dinner on Friday evening, and he was telling me like about, because
it was your birthday.
Yeah, well, thank you. And we were conversing about the powerlifters, and he was telling me just like how nice everyone is, and just like how good that community is. But like when you talk to the bodybuilders, it's all right and everything.
Talk smack.
Yeah, and it's like there's quite a difference between the communities. Now I believe, and it's proven, and I think Matthew kind of agrees with me on this as well. And there's also like lots of research, especially lately coming out, that powerlifters should do quote unquote bodybuilding, because it will help promote more strength gains. But because there's like, it's like that vampires versus werewolf kind of thing. So they don't want to cross into that realm or whatever.
Yeah.
But like the difference between, because you were talking about like thresholds and whatnot, when you're quote unquote bodybuilding, you are, to keep it very general, like, or simplified, you're taxing more of your cells. When you're powerlifting, you're taxing your CNS, which is forever adapting. And that's why these guys don't really plateau within powerlifting, because your CNS is forever adapting.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Where your cells will fight back and not want to do certain genetic expressions or whichever. Right? And so that's where powerlifters, they continuously do those big lifts and get stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
But there is like people that can attest to this, and the research shows like there have been guys that have taken time off from powerlifting for 6 months to maybe even a year, and they've come back to powerlifting, and their strength just went way up or whatever. Cause
I thought about because there's a lot of bodybuilders right at King's, and I watch them and I think, wow, I would like to learn how to use specific exercises to isolate my muscles, because I just gain muscles all over the place, and I don't totally understand why. I just makes me pick things up and put them down again. It really is. I like that part about powerlifting. It's like a no-brainer in a way. Whereas you kind of have to be a tactician in a way for bodybuilding, and there's a lot of science behind it.
So you want to know what I say? Bodybuilders are trying to find the most difficult way to lift that weight. Powerlifters are trying to find the easiest way to lift that weight. That's how I tell people the difference between the two.
That's very true, because you have to do, it isn't about, that's very true. You're just trying to lift as much weight as you can with the least amount of effort. Yeah. It's true. But I've thought about it, but and if I ever did, I would approach Matt, to help me get there. But I think, A, I'm too short, I feel. B, I can't walk in heels for the life of me. So I would have...
The shortness would be in your favor, though, because the shorter muscle length, so you'd have more of that perception of bigger muscle.
Okay, well, I'll take that.
That's why you look at all the bikini girls are very short, the ones with the big butts and glutes and everything.
Figure. Well, I do have a massive peach, so But I can't walk in those damn heels, so I'd have to compete in the one without the heels. but I think that's the one where they're huge. So
I wouldn't. What's the division? Would it be?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think physique does high. I think bikini is the only one that does high heels.
I don't know, but I would fall flat on my face, and I wouldn't even get you get a ribbon.
Yeah, please don't ever come back.
Well, and I noticed that too, and whoever's listening, I'm not meaning this in a bad way, but I noticed that everybody gets a little medal in bodybuilding. Like somebody, it almost looked that way in the female one.
Because there's so many classes. If there's like,
because in the men's there aren't.
Yeah, there's so many. There's so many like classes, ABC, whichever. Like someone could speak more on this because, like I said, I can easily coach someone to a bodybuilding stage, but I don't care to involve myself in that community. Yeah. But there are just so many classes.
But it just, for me, it just feels like I would do it to improve my powerlifting. Yeah. Because in powerlifting, you're not there to, like, none of us have makeup on. Our hair looks like crap on the end. There is no look at me, kind of crap. We've got this singlet on that just shows every little roll that if you potentially have, you can't hide your cellulite. There is no tanning it's just, and we all look the same. We're all like, don't care. We're all rooting for each other because at the end of the day, there is only first, second, and third, and we're all happy for those people. I don't understand why the community is that way, but it's the community you walk into for sure. I think people have this perception that they're very standoffish and they don't want to talk.
Like powerlifters?
Yeah.
Well, here's like, you could correct me if I'm wrong or if you feel different. I don't think powerlifters have body dysmorphia like bodybuilders do, because they're like, powerlifters are there to lift weights. Yeah. I mean, most of them are smashing donuts and everything. Yeah. They don't care about their physique, right? I mean, they might not that they don't care about their physique, but not to the extent of a bodybuilder where they could be, like look like Matthew and think they look like me. You know what I mean? And so I think that's where that's one of the reasons why the community is probably better as well, because I think powerlifters are fighting less inner demons than bodybuilders would be.
Yeah. Although I like to keep myself a little leaner, just because I don't want to go back to that size 6
it's just
person
too,
that
right? Like,
Well,
have you seen there's a guy going around on TikTok, a trend, he dresses up as like a janitor and everything, and he'll go up to like these massive bodybuilders, and he looks small. He's very lean and looks small. He's one of the strongest powerlifters in the world, I think. And he'll go up like all like barely speaking English, like as a prank, and then just pop reps for their one max rep, right? Like it's just crazy. But that's just showing you that you don't need, because that's like when you hear farmer strength. Farmers aren't huge, but they're like really strong. It's because it's all those multi-joint movements taxing the central nervous system, creating those adaptations for strength.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where like you don't have to be like, yes, obviously calories help with strength, as you know, having to eat 3,500 plus.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be, super huge kind of thing. So I think like, because there's a lot of like the nutrition around powerlifting, I always chuckle at. Because you'll see them eating candies like mid-session and everything when they have like the least glycolytically demanding work. Yeah,
there are rockets in my bag.
Yeah, right. But some of them will just like, that's okay. But some of them will just pile on the food because they were told to eat more calories. Now, okay, that might be a better time to get in such calorically dense foods, even though it's not very glycolytically demanding. It's still better than you sitting on your butt and ingesting that stuff.
Yeah.
But then they end up dealing with a lot of inflammation. Yeah. And then this inflammation impacts the CNS.
Yeah. And inflammation is, I definitely have to get that name of that thing you.
Yeah, for sure. I'll definitely send you a link.
Because I have inflammation for sure. And you're fine. You're fine.
Like the woodpecker.
But I think my diet is a little bit, I keep it nicer. Mm-hmm. But, I will have pizza here and there. I will, but I'm not like your typical power lifter for sure.
Yeah.
in the diet range of things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like doing cardio. That's why it fits nice for me.
Yeah.
Because I've never liked doing ever in my life.
Boring.
I
So boring.
hate it. So I do like squat cardio, and you get a minute rest in between, like 15 reps or 12 reps or whatever it is. But that would be hard for me if I ever decided to try bodybuilding, because you have to do all that cardio. I hate cardio. Cardio's stupid. It's like cardio's like pants. Stupid. They are.
Well, Matthew and I, we were actually talking about that on Friday about cardio, and like, because at the end of the day, like when you're talking about creating caloric deficits, so many people are focused on like cardio and training. But if you look at your NEAT, like other than your BMR, obviously your non-exercise activity thermogenesis is one of the highest contributors to your caloric deficit. Yeah. So sometimes, like when you look at individuals being prescribed so much cardio, that's because they're not getting a lot of NEAT, whether that be because such a reduction in calories makes you lazy, right? A simple way of putting it, because your body is going into that preservation mode. So you just like, if I told you to go for a walk when you're in that very low calorie state, you're going to be like, I don't really want to. But if I put cardio on your program, you're probably more inclined to go for that walk.
Yes.
Right? Or sorry, do that cardio.
I'd rather walk.
Right? But when you have like people like bodybuilders who work labor intensive jobs, they do the least amount of cardio because they're getting their quote unquote cardio from their work, but that's just their NEAT. And then you manipulate the nutrition. Right? So like when I got down, because I got down to 7% body fat, when I had done that, I only did cardio, I think like 3 times a week. That's all I had done, was just 3 times a week. I did the Stairmaster because it was the least boring for me.
Yeah. And right now I'm trying to drop weight. And so we have some little bit of cardio in just riding the bike. Yeah. Walking. I tried walk. Well, not try. I always walk at least twice a day for 10 minutes. But my body is hanging on. It does not want to let go of. So I don't know if it's water retention, if it's inflammation, potentially. But at least now I've dropped below 150 pounds. Okay. Because my body really likes 150 or 155 pounds. I don't know why it likes that. It likes to sit there. But I am trying to drop, and by trying to drop, it's just hanging on. Like this morning it was 149. I'm like, come on, I don't feel like 149. I feel like 145. Yeah. I look like I'm 145, and my memory of what I did looked that way. Yeah. And in my body is like, nope, you're just not there yet, and it's hanging on. And so that I don't understand why, and I'm not going to worry about it because I've been told not to worry about it, so I'm not worrying about it. But
yeah, that's the difficult thing about powerlifting, because like you don't like you need to make weight and you want to be healthy, but losing weight will mean losing strength. Yeah. Because that reduction in calories will create that strength loss. So it's like that fine line. Yeah. That's why a lot of them will do like the water cuts, but then like, other than it being obvious, but there is research, like it's pretty detrimental to your performance to do those extreme water cuts.
Well, and I'm not young, and water cuts are not safe. Well, they're safe, but if you're older and you have, potential for kidney disease, is not good for your kidneys. Mm-hmm. I would rather not do like a water cut. I would rather just weigh in and lift, because I'm not an Olympian. I'm just Sid from Calgary that likes to power lift. Mm-hmm. That's it. So
who has a national record?
Okay. But it's not something I would rather just come in a couple, at least a kilogram below, and just lift. Yeah. And have fun doing it. And I found out the other day there were students in the audience at National that I had taught, and they were there. And they were cheering for me. And it's like, that's what I'd rather have is have them,
inspiring people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that at the end of the day, I like the fact that my daughter went to school And because I sent her the clip I have a little clip that is sort of a reel of all of the lifts I did, and you pay for them to do this. And she took that to school and showed it to all her friends and all her teachers. And I got an email from a couple of the teachers going, I'm going to the gym.
See, very inspiring.
So I'm like, okay,
very inspiring.
I'd rather do that. And so, and it doesn't hurt that when I scratch myself, I can feel my tricep.
Right?
You know, it's nice.
Yeah.
It is nice.
So what do you think would have happened if you had not got into powerlifting? What do you think? Would you still have gone to the gym? Like, let's say, because you said Matthew kind of like persuaded you to do powerlifting.
Well, he it was always my choice for sure.
Yeah.
But he was just like, he just introduced it to me.
Okay.
And said, do you want it to be a hobby where we can do powerlifting moves in our training, or do you want to actually compete? And when I finally figured out, I made a decision. I thought, well, I'll just compete because I was showing such improvements in the gym when we went to Renegade for sure. I started seeing changes because it's a smaller gym too.
Yeah, I went in there initially. The only reason I didn't go because I don't like to personal train, so I have very limited amount of clients or whatever. And they had like where Leo is pay per session, Renegade's pay per month, so it wasn't justifiable for me. It was a decent looking gym.
Yeah, like for what I needed at that time, it was perfect. Yeah.
So let's say you didn't meet. Let's say you didn't meet Matthew. Yeah. What do you think you'd be doing?
I would just be doing what I usually would do, which is, I really should go to the gym. Maybe I'll go next week.
Yeah, so you would.
Maybe I'll go next week.
The wasted membership.
I'm going to start again, and I would do it for a little while, and then I would stop.
Yeah.
I don't have time to go to the gym. So I had every excuse you had I could come up with, and if I know it drove my husband mad, because I would always say, I'm going to start going to the gym, and he'd be like, I've heard her say that. I don't know how many times. And he would just say, good. He would say, support me. But I know inside he'd be like, she's not going to.
Yeah. He knows better.
And so by getting a trainer for me, it made me accountable. And as soon as I was made accountable, well, look, you're paying for it.
Yeah.
So, and when I open my wallet, all these little moths come out. I don't like spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, it makes me accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of when the relationship changed from a trainer to a coach, then you want your coach to be proud of you. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be just another person he coaches. Mm-hmm. You want your coach to be very proud of you.
Yeah.
So for me, keeping a trainer, it was making myself accountable. Mm-hmm. So it's written into my life for months.
Yeah.
Every day the same. Every other day it's at a different time, right?
Yeah.
But it's still in my life. Mm-hmm. And I think, like I say, if powerlifting ends, I will continue to do things on my own, but still have a trainer that gives me something that I can follow. Yeah. Over the month.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of what my sister does.
Yeah, and see that's does too. Yeah, see that's like I used to like hate being called a personal trainer for a while because a lot of them like you would do like a 3-day weekend course and then go train people and have no idea what you're doing, right? Yeah. And it would just give such a bad name. We're almost done, sweetie. It gives such a bad name to personal training. Yeah. And so like I always kind of like, also because I'm like, not trying to sound like a douche here, but I'm way above that scope. Like I work with diseases and all that kind of stuff. And so then like I didn't want to be classified as a personal trainer. So Jonathan with stage 4 prostate cancer wouldn't come to work with me. Right. But when I meet people such as Matthew, right. And like in hearing how you feel about him and like hearing your story and like this is exactly like why I wanted you to come on as a guest for the podcast. It's like, that is what I want to think of when I think of personal trainer. But you said it yourself, you think of as coach.
Yeah.
So that's why we use that term coach because like coach, I believe like that's when, like you say, the relationship from trainer to coach, but that is when a relationship itself is established.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah. Like I was accountable to myself and my pocketbook before the coach. Right. And I very much so see that relationship of a coach for me is a lot of it is trust. A lot of it is the knowledge base that my coach has, that I know that he's not just spewing off something to get likes on his Instagram page. He reads, he takes courses, he does what he needs to do. And he's not a coach that's been coaching for 30 years and has been coaching the same way. And things have changed in the way that you should train and you should think. He's appropriately critical, because I need someone that's not going to go, "You're doing great. You're awesome. You'll be fine." I need them to say, "What the hell was that? You're doing that again." Because in my heart, when I come back up from the squat, I'm like, crap, that was crap. I know. Oh, there it is. Because I know. And now I train myself. If I'm by myself, for whatever reason, I'm training myself that day, I know, oh, that was shit. And I got to do it again. And I'll make myself do it again. Because I know that's what my coach would do.
Yep.
So things like teaching me how to focus. So when I'm in the gym, I'm not looking around at other people. I am focused on what I'm doing. I am not there. It sounds horrible, but I'm not there to make friends. Yeah. I have over a period of time. I've made a lot of friends there and acquaintances, but I'm not there for that purpose. It's a focus. I have a goal and I'm going to hit that goal. I have certain numbers I want to hit. I can't do that if I'm farting around. Like we put me on a timer. When that timer is, I have to do it again. Like it's ritualistic in a way. It's very serious. So, I do envy other personal trainers and their clients, because they're laughing and they're goofing around a little bit. I make Matt laugh because I do stupid stuff. Like I run into things. I have no sense of self-awareness or perception. So we make each other laugh, which is great, but that's not why we're there. This isn't, this is I'm very serious about it. And I'm glad my coach is too. I need someone that's going to not hold back. Yeah. I'm not a princess. And I know, it's a derogatory term and I'm going to get in trouble for saying it, but I'm not. I need someone who's just going to say, "What? Don't be a baby. Do it again." It's how I was brought up a little bit. It's the coaches I've had when I was in track. It was very much, "You're going to run that again." It's, it's just a different, that's how my brain, that's what I need. That's that kind of push. My husband's the same way in a weird way. If I feel down about whatever is going on with my training, he'll remind me, this is, he's very black and white, very, will just set me back on course. Yeah. But I don't get my feelings don't get hurt. Like I'll cry because I'm so frustrated, not because you're making me cry. Okay. It's very different. It's very different. And I don't cry very easily.
As a coach, it's difficult because like where you say, like, there are clients that I have had where they come in and it's a lot of talking, and as the coach, you're like, come on, let's just do your next set, whatever. But then also when you work with people long term, like for me personally, like a lot of people know I am a little more emotional and whatnot. You establish these good relationships, and then like I sometimes end up talking too much. You know what I mean? And it's like, because I like this person and I want to share my life with them. Yeah. And like I tell them about my day and what's happened and everything. And then so that's where like I kind of struggle with it's another reason why sometimes I don't like doing it. Because it's like sometimes it's hard for me to get in that zone. But like, Todd Vano at King's there, like when I watch him and he's just like, him and his client don't say a word half the time. And in my mind, I'm like, that'd be so awkward. But then I'm also thinking like, well, she's probably getting a really good bang for her buck.
Yeah.
Because there's solely it's same with Matthew. I rarely, like, when I look over at you and Matthew's just half the time, you know?
But we do. I've told him a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
He's told me a ton of stuff. But I trained with Todd it was 3 weeks out from nationals, because Matt went to Mexico for the.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
So Todd kind of took over, but he has a different style, a very different style, like very more positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
But he was chatterbox, like, because we're the same age. We think the
Really?
same, like we're somewhere around the same age, I think. And he was great. He was he's got all the he knows all the rules. Like, he was at the only time where he was kind of like didn't say too much is when I deadlifted. He goes, I don't have any feedback. That was okay. That was good.
Yeah.
But he definitely, there was a lot of, you try this when you're squatting, try this, try that, try, a lot like a teacher.
Okay.
So very, very different. But yeah, I've noticed that he can be very quiet. He has a dry sense of humor, which makes freaking live.
I was gonna say Todd's pretty funny. Yeah.
He is pretty funny.
I was gonna say, good on Matthew for it. Takes a lot for, like, to trust someone. Like I've always said, if I ever had to send a client, excuse me, to a personal trainer, or however Matthew would like to identify himself as, I would pick Matthew. Because I'm very particular about, it's like if I'm working with a client online, if they have a personal trainer, I'm just like, I'm sorry, but this is not going to work.
Yeah.
Right? Because they just don't understand. They don't have, like, once again, not trying to sound like a douche, but they don't have the same level of knowledge. And I need you to perform this workout program in a specific manner that is in conjunction with your nutrition and whatever other protocols we have in place. So I don't have a lot of trust in people because they don't understand that aspect. Matthew is he's so open-minded and willing to learn, like the amount of questions that he's asked me or whatever. And you don't get that often with trainers, because a lot of trainers have ego, right? Yeah. Like we all have an ego. And so a lot of them are not willing to ask another trainer because it might also be that competition. But I don't feel in competition with Matthew, right? Yeah. He's got his niche. He's an amazing trainer. Right. And I have my niche, which I'm great at. And we both understand that there's this, unspoken mutual agreement. And so he'll come to me for this stuff. And if I had to trust him with anything, he would be the one that I would trust with. Yeah. So with you being both a nurse and a powerlifter, let's say, what's some advice let's start with nursing. Because as you teach and everything, what is some advice you could give to somebody, or, some information for someone who is looking to become a nurse?
I think if you're coming out of high school and you want to be a nurse, you have to have really, 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 really high grades. The average to get into nursing school has jumped a lot. So I think for our program, it's like 87 or higher, but you need to have way higher than that to get in. So grades do play a big role, but the other thing is, if you're not an empathetic, person, it's sort of like you have to play all sides of your emotions. If you're not an empathetic person that doesn't take things personal, it's hard to be empathetic and don't take things personal. And you have to have a really good work ethic, I think. And you can't let things bother you too much, right? There's these behavioral pieces that they recommend certain professions have. And my advice is you really have to have a really good sense of humor to be a good nurse. And the reason is because you see not so nice things. And you have to be able to find a way to deal with that without medicating yourself in some bizarro way, right? So that's the first thing, is you have to think about how you are as an emotional person, right? When I went into nursing school, I was an introvert and very naive. But boy, that changed. After 2.5 years, I was not the same person. Seems like that's happened twice now in my life. But so grades and having a personality where if your patient gets mad at you, it is what it is. They are going through something that could very well be horrible that you cannot completely understand. No, they're not supposed to abuse you. Of course not. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's about being able to shake it off and walk off the unit or out of the community clinic and leave it all behind. That's a really hard thing to learn and to be able to do. Like I say, I've struggled with that a lot. It's hard. It's not easy. So my advice for anyone who wants to go into nursing, just make sure that you have really good grades, because that's very highly competitive, but that you know what you're walking into. Mm-hmm. It's not a glorified, thing that you see on Grey's Anatomy or whatever. You're not in some, you're not in some back room with a doctor. Like, that's such a load of crap. A lot of it is so stupid, and a lot of it is not real. There's some show out there now, it's called Nurses or something. It's so stupid. And it's so not what nurses is. You want to know what nurses do? You watch Nurse Jackie.
Okay.
That is a series that came out. It was freaking awesome. She was addicted to medication. And not that nurses are, but it was real in how they portrayed nurses and what they do and the relationships they have with people. So it was, if you want a good show, that's a good show.
Nurse Jackie.
Nurse Jackie.
Okay.
And then, so that's getting into nursing, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. Because I know quite a few people that are interested in that or are, in that journey. So now, what about powerlifting? Because you are relatively new to it. You said, what, how many years ago?
Well, my first competition was in 2020.
Yeah, so you're relatively new. So I always think it's best to ask the people that are fresh to it because they remember. Like we were talking about before, you sometimes forget where you come from. So what's some advice you give somebody that is no matter the age? That is looking to get into powerlifting?
I would say the hardest thing is, I'll start with that because I always start with the negative. The hardest thing is realizing that you're not going to be like everyone else. You're not going to lift the big numbers unless you're a 19-year-old lifting and have been lifting. And you can be the person that lifts a lot of weight, but if you are not technically sound, you're not going to get white lights. And it's that simple, right? So it takes a lot of practice. So going into it, I didn't realize how much work it was going to be. I didn't realize how much I would have to learn to balance work and the home life and everything else. And you have to be able to realize that they will be challenged, right? And you have to learn to be able to, when to push yourself really hard and when to step back and take care of the other aspects of your life, I would say. But it may not be Olympic sport, but it is no joke. There are people that are really good. Like this coming weekend, I'm going to be watching the Sheffield online because I want to watch lifters lift. Some people make fun of CrossFitters, but CrossFitters watch other CrossFitters compete. And I like how the CrossFitting community is like the powerlifting community where they cheer each other on. Unless you're the really big CrossFitters, even then they cheer each other on. It's amazing. This community is the same. But as a newer powerlifter, don't expect that you're going to be able to lift what everybody else lifts until you've done some serious training. Because you watch everybody else and you think, oh, I can do that. And then you realize very quickly, no, No, you can't. Or you can, and then you hurt yourself bad. And that's the other thing is when you watch powerlifters on Instagram or Facebook or wherever they're putting their pictures or their videos, they're posting their best stuff. They're not posting the crap. And I had to realize that because I was like, I'm not doing anything correctly. I've had to learn everything from scratch. When I thought I knew how to do stuff like bench, nope. I had no idea it was such a technical thing. I thought it was like up, down, you're done, whatever. So there's that as well, that it is, if you think you know how to do it, you really don't, because someone's going to say, what the hell was that? Really help you, especially deadlifting, whether it's sumo or the more traditional way of deadlifting, which is what I do, which is, the name for it is escaping me.
Conventional.
Thank you. Conventional. I tried sumo, but it hurts my hips. Can't do it. Just can't. So I do conventional, which works for my body type. It doesn't matter, but you're just not going to lift what other people are going to lift. You have to put the hours in the gym. There are some natural, genetically gifted people, but like I've mentioned Jessica Bittner, I watch her because I watch her videos because it's wonderful to see that someone, that young and she has diabetes and she is an amazing lifter. She has trouble with her sugars, but she still lifts and still she's going to Sheffield. Like that's like the ultimate place. Okay. And, but she puts the time in. Like that's what they don't show you, is that they put so much work in to doing that perfect lift that they put out. But they have horrible days. They have horrible lifts. And what my point, where I was going with my point, is they don't tell you is that you get injured. Like injured where my hip was hurting so bad and I had numbness and tingling in both arms because of my thoracic outlet syndrome. I wasn't sleeping. I was in pain all the time. And I don't like to take ibuprofen because I was addicted to it. I was taking it 800 milligrams for my knee before I started training. Now I barely take it. So I don't like to take it. So I wasn't sleeping. So you can injure yourself pretty badly if you don't have someone guiding you, even if it's an online like coach. Yeah. You can, people say it can be a dangerous sport, because you just one bad way in your squat and you can hurt your back. Just one weird thing you do with your bench and you can hurt your back and your shoulders. So it's, and I've had that too. I've subluxed a rib. Shoulder was weird. Like, so they don't tell you that. I didn't know I could have these potentially other injuries outside of my knee, which my knee isn't even the issues that I usually have. So that's that. But the positives around that I didn't realize is that there's this perception that they're, introverted, cliquey, nasty people, which isn't true. It looks like it, but it's not. Even when I lift at King's and I'm not there with my coach and I was, just deadlifting on my own, the other members or they're mainly men that are power lifters at King's, because Alexa left. She went away, and Pam sometimes is there and she's given me pointers in the past. But they'll say, hey, that was a great deadlift. Or they'll say, hey, have you thought about doing this? And it's spontaneous. It's not, exclusionary. They don't care that I'm a 50-year-old woman. They're just like, wow, look at you. You just deadlifted. No, my mom couldn't do that. Or, my friends couldn't do that. That's awesome. You're almost at, 2+ red plates. So not at first. They weren't like that at first, but they get to know you very, very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, when you say that, that's exactly where what I thought. I'm like, oh, look at these pricks and everything and everything. But yeah, then you begin talking
In their Crocs.
right?
You know what I'm
But in their Crocs. But it's funny because like I was saying to Matthew again, I said, when you go in and you judge people, you set the bar so low so that when you finally get to know them, it's like, it's such a discrepancy. So even if they weren't that great, you're like, oh, this guy's pretty awesome because you just set that bar so low, like the low expectations. But no, they've all been wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, I've chatted with them a few times, and obviously, like, I'm not in that world kind of thing. I don't powerlift or anything, but when you do end up having a conversation, it's like, but you just watch and everybody, you can see the supportiveness. You can see like,
they're
the cheering
all rooting
on
for each other. And they're direct competitors.
Yeah.
Some of them are direct competitive, and it doesn't matter.
Yep. Yeah.
It just doesn't matter to them. They just want to see everybody do really well. Where it becomes a different level of competitiveness, I would say, is nationals to world. Okay. And it's because it's like, oh, we can't let Ontario win, or you know, and we have all our jackets, and you know, the best is the Alberta t-shirt says, you know, 100% Alberta beef. Like some really cool things that it makes you proud of your own province. And but even so, everybody was cheering for everybody else. Like, it's awesome. It's hilarious. You would think it's the opposite, but it's not. Yeah. It's exactly like that. So, you know, how long I'll do this, I have no idea. It just depends on how my body responds. But right now, I feel pretty good. It doesn't affect my work and hasn't affected my home. It's just made things, you know, nicer and happier because I'm nicer and happier. Yeah, fair. No, that's awesome. Yeah, like if all that isn't enough for someone to like join into that kind of community, then that seems like a great community. Like I said, we were talking about like bodybuilding is just, Well, you know, I don't know for sure. Not knocking bodybuilders fully. It's just there is more drama, we'll say, within that community. So it's great to hear that there is such supportive people within that. And like, you know, so hopefully people who are listening to this that have ever considered powerlifting can, like, if that was like a fear of being judged or something, that they can move on from that and realize, okay, cool, that's actually probably one of the least judgmental groups by the sounds of it. And so it seems so. Well, at least our community. I really can't speak for other places, but they're just, you know, they're just proud of each other. They're just, and I think it's because the like external perception, or, you know, what people look like is not a factor. It's what they can physically do is the factor. And you'd think they'd be like, I could lift more than you. It's more of a motivator. It's like, hey, look how hard you worked. Maybe I can get there too. And I'm going to ask for your help because I know you'll help me. Maybe in bodybuilding, it's because it is, you're comparing what you look like to other people. And you're being directly compared. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. And I don't think it would help to sleep with the judges or anything. Not in powerlifting, because at the end of the day, you got to meet all of these things to get those. Yeah, exactly. I don't think it would work. And it's a sad thing. When I read that, there was an article about that, that was happening in the U.S. I don't know if it happens in Canada, but I know it was happening in the U.S. in the and it's the bodybuilding world. That is so sad. And I don't think that happens in the men's league. I think it's just the just the women's league. Yeah, it's just terrible. And I'm not naive. I'm just saying it's terrible. I mean, I figured that there would be some kind of anything to win. Well, there was like that one survey where they said if you took drugs that guaranteed you'd be the world champion, like the greatest in the world, but you would die in like, I think it was like 5 years or something, would you still do it? And a huge percentage said yes. Oh dear. Right? Just all that for the victory. Yeah, all that to stand at the top, like, or get that crown that you can't even stand on your head. Again, it would fall off. It would be a disaster if it was me. God. Well, Sydney, like I was mentioning, I love doing this because you get to know people, but I learned a lot today too. Oh, good, I appreciate that. And so like I said, I knew nothing about powerlifting,
and I've always thought about powerlifting, so it's really cool to understand like, you know, how the competitions work and like what goes into it and like your own experiences, everything. And super proud of you for placing in nationals, and super proud of you for national record. That's amazing. You know, and like I said, I think you're definitely in the right hands with Matthew, and I'm excited to see what you can do moving forward with everything, because it sounds like you're doing great. So
we'll see.
So I really appreciate your time and coming on here, Sid.
Lovely. Anytime.
Thanks so much. Okay, guys. Take care, everybody.